Oh, he won on time.
She was on a winning position for her.
I wanted it so bad, and he did it.
Now take the rook! Now take the rook!
What a move!
Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome back to the I Am Not GM Speed Chess Championship brought to you by Chess.com. We're here today with International Masters John Bartholomew and Lawrence Trent. And I'm just going to get right to it. And I'm going to start with you, Lawrence. What will it take from you to beat somebody of John Bartholomew's caliber?
Well, look, I mean, John, he's been touted as the tournament favorite, you know, that he's going to walk through this field without too many difficulties. You know, he's a very handsome young man, as you will see, but, you know, he's going to be a tough test, but, you know, I've got some things to say about John that that a lot of you may agree with or may disagree with. And as a lot of you know, I play cards a lot, and in cards, we call a player who doesn't like risk, doesn't like action, a nit. And John is the equivalent of a nit in chess. This is a guy who enjoys bringing his queen out on move 2, only to then put it back on its starting square on move 3, be slightly worse, and actually derive pleasure from doing that. This is a guy who is pretty much just Eric Rosen 2.0. He is a, you know, to aspire to be this kind of chess player, well, I'm really sorry, guys. That's not the way to go. And today I have one mission and one mission only. And that is to get this guy in a dogfight. There's no other way. I'm going to get him in the mud, wrestling with just his jocks on, me and him, and that is it. He's a great player. He is the favorite on paper. But if I get him into a scrap, I think I've got good chances. And we're going to put this nit in his place.
Wow.
Wow. I think we should have a moment of silence. That was a soliloquy worthy of a Shakespeare play, but
that's quite the introductory speech.
John, you had a very convincing victory in your first round matchup, or shall I call you Eric 2.0? So, Eric 2.0, what kind of lessons did you learn? It was a very convincing win against International Master David Pruess, but what things are you going to try to improve? What small improvements are you going to try to make to contest your very worthy and very bloodthirsty opponents?
Yeah, look, I mean, what Lawrence just said makes perfect sense. I agree with a lot of that. I think his strategy is optimal in playing someone like me. And to Lawrence's credit, I thought he played an excellent match against Kostya Kavutskiy. So I watched a good portion of that. And Lawrence, you were on fire, really. You were seeing a lot of stuff. And when Lawrence gets in there and mixes it up, and I forgot what you said about the jocks. That must be an English expression. I'm not familiar with that. But when you get in there and mix it up and you're firing on all cylinders, you're quite hard to stop. But I do think my style causes problems for you. And it is a good stylistic matchup. I think the audience is going to enjoy it today, win or lose. And as far as what I learned from the previous match, I've just honestly been focusing a lot on my own game, especially in the past year, in playing online in Blitz and Bullet. So I'm definitely one of those players. I don't try to over adjust or make too many changes based on what has happened in the short term. I just play my game. I'm confident with it. I mean, yeah, I'm the overall seed here, but I don't really put much stock in that. I mean, this is one tournament. Unexpected stuff can happen in any match. I do think the online players have a significant edge, as has been borne out in the standings thus far. But I'm confident just playing my game. So that's my nitty answer to your question.
Well, Lawrence, I'm going to ask you. Does it hurt more that when you try to call John out and you really just you put it to him and he just responds with this nice Midwestern?
My plant behind me would have given a more trash kind of answer. I mean, this guy makes sure. I mean, what's he doing on the chessboard? He should be in politics. I couldn't give a thrilling answer if it slept with him and made him coffee in the morning.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's time to get this Midwesterner, smiley, handsome guy off the airwaves. He is just taking up space here. And it's time to put the real chess, the chess that everybody loves, the blood on the board, back on the map. I'm not here to knit it up with John Bartholomew. If he wants to knit it up, He can do his very best, but I promise you, I'm going to be throwing the kitchen sink at him. And if he wins the match, if I can say afterwards, I gave it my all, I threw everything at him and he still beats me, fair play. But I'm going to make sure he works for it and work damn hard.
I would hope so. Yeah. I'm ready to get it on.
Wow. Well,
Let's do it.
So
Let's go.
On that note, we are going to let you get settled in, get ready for this match. I'm excited just by this pre-match interview. Everybody, we'll be back in just a few. And when we return, we will have the opening games of this matchup between John Bartholomew and Lawrence Trent. And let us remind everybody about the bracket of this I Am Not GM Speed Chess Championship, because it's been an enthralling series of events thus far. And as we see here, we look across the bracket, we see John Bartholomew taking on Lawrence Trent in the upper left. The winner of this match faces the winner of tonight's matchup between Carissa Yip and Greg Shahade. And well, we talked to the players beforehand, and they're all rooting for Carissa over Greg. They said, I'm going to have a great day. I'll sleep easy as long as Greg Shahade loses. But Danya, when you look at this bracket, we see Teddy Coleman, Alina Kashinskaya in the semis on the right side. Who do you think are the favorites on the left?
Well, in this particular match, and I think if I say what I'm about to say, Lawrence might pause the match, book a flight to the US, and come after me. But I'm going to have to go with John, and I'll explain that shortly. In terms of the evening match, for which I will be unable to join you, Robert, but I'm going to have to go with Carissa. There is a certain rumor about a certain device with which Carissa makes moves. I will not elaborate on that further. And I'm looking at Alina, who has played incredibly well, and I think she is the favorite to beat Teddy Coleman. So we have some fascinating matchups ahead, and this is the first of them.
Yes, and let's take a look at our two players in this match, because John Bartholomew is the #1 seed, and he is probably everybody's presumptive favorite, at least coming into this tournament. But we've seen some fighting chess from all of the participants, including, as you mentioned, Alina Kashinskaya, Teddy Coleman. And as we see John Bartholomew, he's rated nearly 2,700 in Blitz. His bullet rating is about 2,600, and that's typically without increment. And on Lawrence Trent's end, he's in that 2,500 rating range, but once again, without the increment. And Danya, when you think about these two duking it out, who does the increment favor?
That's a great question. I will admit that I'm thoroughly familiar with Lawrence's banter and his multiple soliloquies. I am less familiar with his actual blitz and bullet practice, so I'm not sure about his speed. Maybe you can help me with that, Robert. In terms of John's play, he likes the increment. John is not a huge fan of wild time scrambles. He's a very, very solid player, and with that 1 second addition, he's absolutely a force to be reckoned with. And he's also very fast. So he's definitely not against that increment. But what do you know about Lawrence Trent's blitz and bullet skills?
Well, I can't say what I want to say on air. I am hired by this company. Yeah, I'm just going to keep it to myself. But I'm ready for liftoff. We will see. We don't have to talk. Lawrence is a lot of talk, and John is saying, I'm going to let my moves do the talking for me. We're about to have liftoff here to see the opening games in the 5-minute portion. In fact, we are underway. I see that John has the white pieces. Will Lawrence play something offbeat, try to take it to John Bartholomew, or will John's solid style prevail? Danya,
D5, very offbeat.
Very offbeat. Playing
extremely. What is this open? I've never seen this before in my life.
Responding to the Queen's Pawn opening with a Queen's Pawn move of your own.
And clearly Lawrence has never seen Moon Knight F3 before because he has sunk into it. And there we have
A6. I mean, what are you doing, Lawrence? What is this guy up to?
I'm going to take it to that Midwestern, and it's going to be a bloodthirsty match.
No, but John with Bishop F4.
You need to work on your Lawrence. I'm going to be honest with you.
I do. I'll unveil it a little bit later.
Okay.
But John playing Bishop F4, he's playing very solidly. We saw in his first round matchup against David Pruess, John is the epitome of solid, positionally sound chess. He's very, very hard to beat, and he certainly doesn't beat himself very often. How does Lawrence deal with that?
It's going to be difficult because Lawrence is a guy who just loves chaos on the board, and he's trying to create it. He played A6, an innocuous-looking move on the second turn of the game. And I would say not a very good one, but in many lines, it can be handy to just prevent anything happening on the queen side. But then again, sometimes you wish that pawn could go back to A7 to shore up some of the squares on the queen side. So I'm not really buying the opening for black, but then again, look at the clock. Lawrence is already up 20 seconds, and John plays queen D1. I mean, that's the exact thing Lawrence was making fun of. Playing queen back to D1 for no real reason.
And I'm just checking in on Lawrence's facial expression. We don't see any grins or any smiles just yet. I think Lawrence realizes that he doesn't have an advantage here, but C5 striking in the center. Now after D takes C5, Lawrence has got another decision to make. Does he simply recapture on C5? Does he play knight E4 and try to pounce immediately? I'm not sure if queen D1 was the best way to solve sort of the dynamic problems in White's position. It seems like John's lack of development on the king side is bothering him a little bit.
Well, why did he play queen to d1? He could have just started with bishop to d3. You want to get that development out the way, castle kingside, go ahead and do it. The queen was not in any danger on the f3 square. And at some moment, perhaps there was even a queen g3 type of idea. It wouldn't have worked in the initial position, probably because of knight h5. Although the more I look at it, queen g3 is actually quite a tempting move. He instead retreated with queen to d1, and we see c5, and now the queen to a5. And Donnie, we've talked about this a lot. In Blitz games especially, piling up on doubled pawns can be very good for the side without the double pawns. But here, where white has the two bishops, and if this board starts opening up, that's going to be really problematic for Lawrence.
Yes, indeed. Lawrence has to be very, very accurate in this position. b5 actually came to my mind, intending c takes b5, c4. I feel like that might be in Lawrence's exploratory style, but I don't think that quite does the trick after queen b4. So you're absolutely right. The problem is white is very, very close to consolidating. He just needs to play bishop b2, castle short, and those two bishops will make their presence felt. At the same time, black needs to try to prepare this move knight e4, but it's very, very hard to do. b7 is hanging, although not immediately because c3 will be hanging with check. Maybe just bishop d3 for John. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm not sure who's better.
And I think the reason you're saying that is because you're anticipating some kind of c takes d4 for black, d takes c4, rook c8. And we're mentioning how opening the position should help the side with the bishops, but it also helps the rooks. And black's rook on the c file is creating more trouble for white than maybe worth it. So it's actually a tough decision for John. And we see that he's using a lot of time because c takes d5, there's already knight takes d5, hitting the bishop on f4 and this pawn on c3. So it's a difficult situation for John Bartholomew, and he's down what soon will be a minute on the clock.
Indeed, and bishop d3 runs into b5, I'm pretty sure, and then c4 is simply a fork. Whereas bishop b2, as you pointed out, Robert, I think John just doesn't want to waste that tempo developing the bishop once and then taking on c4 again. He decides on a pretty radical approach, taking on c5, throwing his pawn structure to the wind, but he's carving out that b4 square for his queen, trying to get rid of that very, very annoying pin on the c3 pawn.
And actually, knight c5, queen b4 forces a queen trade because there's no way for you to move your queen while still protecting your knight on c5. And if the queens come off and the bishops have their open space, especially if you take me on b4, I take with my c pawn, I undouble my pawns. Now I just have two nice-looking bishops. How can white possibly complain about a position like this?
Absolutely cannot complain, and certainly someone like John cannot complain. He likes endgames. He likes positional advantages.
Oh, bishop d6.
The problem is
bishop d6
and then
here.
You correct your pawn structure.
Yes, I do. You take me on b4, take with my c pawn, then I can play c5.
Visit to the pawn orthodontist there. Forced with bishop d6, because if you take first on c5 and then go bishop d6, there's rook f8. It just illustrates how important move order is in chess. Move order almost always matters. Bishop d6 is a must play, I think, for John. I just don't see an alternative.
And even after bishop b6, I don't think Lawrence's position is that bad. And I mean, I have to be honest, I keep looking at the clock and thinking that, you know, even if Lawrence gets in a little bit of trouble, he's up so much time that it will be hard for John to take full advantage. And the reason why I think black is doing okay, rook f to c8, knight to e4, very quick ideas, just hitting some of white's pieces. And look at your king, still in the center, not going to be checkmated, but it gives black the opportunity to unleash quick activity. For instance, if you ever take on d5, you've opened the c file for my rook, and black is the one who's activated. White's king in the center, the king side piece is not doing anything. So I do think that ultimately it should be totally fine for Lawrence, but it's one of these positions, Danya, where the longer you play, the more power the two bishops will eventually have.
Indeed, it can swing either way, and the X factor is going to be, in my opinion, will white be able to castle, play bishop f3, and retain the integrity of his structure? At the same time, that rook on c2 is very strong. So I suppose even if John does manage to castle and Lawrence doubles on the c file, which he does, maybe plays a move like h6 or g6 prophylactically, he's got a lot of piece activity. I'm not sure how to weigh, you know, the static and dynamic factors of the position. Maybe it's just around equal.
Yeah, these kind of equality is very confusing for most people, because when you hear a grandmaster say, oh, it's equal, you're like, well, then shouldn't it just be a draw? But I mean, I think that we're looking at this position saying that both sides have opportunities in such a position. Black has the activity along the c file. White has this long-term advantage of having the bishop pair. But look at Lawrence go. He's reinforcing his knight on d5 and the c4 square. Like, these knights can just keep going forward in this position. And white's bishops don't have clear diagonals to work with. I mean, the bishop on d6 looks good, but it's not attacking anything. It's staring into empty space, whereas the knights are actually poking and prodding at concrete threats.
Yes, they are. And maybe I should give John the rest of my coffee because he seems to be a little bit on the slow side here. Basically a minute left for him. That rook d1 move, though, very prudent, because after knight c4 now, there might actually be, no, actually bishop takes d5, e takes d5, rook takes d5. There might be rook d8 there. Just a lot of unpleasantness going on, and I'm sure Lawrence is calculating the proceedings of knight c4.
I'm just showing the conclusion of that line with rook c1 check, and I'm mating you because both sides have not created left for their king, and you just got to make left, not war, right?
Yeah, that's a great saying. Another one into the book. Knight c3 though.
Oh, that is a risky move because the b7 pawn is potentially on pre, but after bishop b7, I guess there's just rook to d8
or knight d1.
Well, yes, knight d1 as well. There's no way for the rook to stay attached to the bishop, but I actually like your move knight d1, of course, better because after bishop c8, then knight c8, rook d1, knight takes d6, and once again, black will strike first in the back rank.
So John definitely holding his breath. Look at that back rank, knight e2, now bishop e2 forced. Lawrence, both sides have very weak back ranks, and both sides have to decide, do they spend a tempo resolving that problem? John trying to plug the c file, bishop c5. Now Lawrence can just plant a knight on d5.
Or knight a4.
Knight a4.
Yeah, he's just hitting his bishop.
Looking quite alarming, quite perilous for white. John's not going to be able to retain that bishop on c5, I'm afraid. I like his move g3, though, very prudent. At least he's going to...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, at least he's going to resolve the problem of the back rank, whereas black still has that problem to solve.
And if black takes immediately on c5, which is why I really like Lawrence's move, Lawrence recognizing that if there were a capture one move ago on c5, bc5, you can't take on c5 because of the back rank mate, and you allow a move like rook to b1 to come with a tempo, hitting the pawn on b7. So by delaying this capture on c5, now you didn't even take the bishop, and he just puts his rooks on the second rank here. The f2 pawn, if you could just add that knight into the mix, but we saw this yesterday, a knight on a4 dominated by a bishop on d4. That knight can't go anywhere, and as soon as you move that knight, I'll probably capture it, and your b and a6 pawns could be quite vulnerable in the near future.
Yeah, it looks like, and we can see by Lawrence's facial expression, he's looking, but oftentimes in these positions, you find that everything is defended as it is here. I feel like white should be able to hold a draw here with accurate defense, but that being said, black is holding all of the cards here. He can put his king on g6. He can even go after that pawn on b4, which is, I'm pretty sure what Lawrence is trying to do, rook a4, for example.
Yes, rook a4 wins that pawn immediately, but he has no rush. The rook on f1 is tied down to this pawn on f2, and so now he goes rook a4. He can, he could have continued with rook to a2, keeping that rook on f1 for a while, but he said, why don't I just go up a pawn here, put my rook in front of the pawn, and this is not going to be an easy win, if it is indeed even winning, because the problem is the black king needs to run into the action. But as soon as the black king runs to the queen side, then there's rook a7, and I start picking off your king side pawns. And if I have your pawns, then I can sacrifice my rook for your pass pawn, and then start marching my pawns of my own. So what do you think about this, Danya? Is this closer to draw territory or win?
This is probably closer to winning territory. As far as I remember, the addition of an extra pawn on the king side favors the side with the extra pawn. But please take that with a grain of salt. There's this old Russian saying that these types of endgames can almost be winning for white, because black basically spends all of his time deciding whether to bring his king to the other side of the board. And when he does, white snags all of the king side pawns and then promotes. So here, Lawrence, I'm not sure. I think that was a little bit premature. It's not an easy draw, but it's also not particularly difficult, provided that John can avoid blunders here. He's got the best pawn structure here to make that draw.
Yeah, and his pawn, the f2, g3, h4 pawns, this is in theoretical drawish territory, but black at some point go e4, threatening e3, just to, distance the pawns from each other. I sacrifice a pawn to disconnect them. So rook to a3, you really want to hit your king to g4, but John showing accurate defense, hitting this pawn f6, there's e4.
And I particularly didn't like that because Lawrence had right around 40 seconds on his clock. He could have taken 30 of them. Okay, he doesn't find anything. He goes for this endgame, accumulates those seconds back, pushes, and tips his hat off if John makes the draw. But he went for this with a little bit too much alacrity, and I think John is very confidently holding on here with time to spare.
Yeah, and I think that
yeah.
Lawrence needs to go for G5. Like, put that king back on F5, try to go G5. He's doing his best here. Oh, king E3 there would have forced the move F5, but instead the king is back. And here comes the king.
Uh-oh.
Wait a second.
Did I jinx him?
Yeah, you might have.
Is this the first instance of commentators
F5.
jinx for April 30th? Now F4 coming in.
F4. Oh, he's bringing the king around.
Into G2. This is looking very bad now. Oh, my goodness.
B3 check. Throw in the check.
Imperceptibly, he brought his king over to G4 through the light squares, and now everything collapses. Rook F3.
And after king E2, rook G3, try rook G5. Like, that's your best effort was rook G5 there. Hoping that you capture on G5 and my H pawn becomes a G pawn, which becomes a queen. And Lawrence Trent. Who is this guy?
I don't know. He's capable of delivering a Shakespearean soliloquy, but he's also capable of playing like a Russian schoolboy in the endgame. He's wearing many hats.
Proud. For the first time in his life, he just made you proud.
Indeed.
Wow, that was
indeed. And John, just totally expressionless. That is also quintessential, John. He's untiltable. Just shakes it off, man. Not my game. All right, next game, guys. Just play solid Slav and, just make a draw with black. And that's what he does. He plays the Slav solid. That's what makes John such a tough player to play in a match. Am I exaggerating, or do you share those thoughts, Robert?
No, John is, of course, a tough customer, but what I think is trouble for him is if Lawrence is beating him in technical positions, that's a really bad sign. Because as Lawrence was very strongly, not even implying, he was just stating that I'm just going to throw this guy in the mud and we're going to have a tactical affair where John is going to try to avoid the tactics at a cost to his position. But if Lawrence is going to win a technical rook end game against the ultra solid, ultra sound sounds really weird now that I came out of my mouth there, but against the extremely sound
ultrasound
John Bartholomew, then that's a problem for JB.
Right. If Lawrence is going to win 8 more games, then we're going to be talking about ultrasounds. But
H4, he's bringing it to him, man.
He is. Lawrence flushed with confidence after that first win, and you can just see he's just savoring that opportunity to attack. And I'm not sure I like John's looking tired. He's looking a little bit unenergetic. He's got to bring the heat here, because you don't want to fall into that hole and dig yourself in a hole in the early going, because then you're going to spend the rest of the match climbing. Lawrence just leaning 50 feet back in his chair. Very surprised at the move H5, although it seems pretty sensible to me.
He's just socially distancing himself from the chessboard right now. And King F1. Look at Lawrence. I mean, King F1 is not one of the first 5 moves that came to my 5 moves. I mean, 10 moves that came to my brain. But he goes King to F1, and what is he thinking here? He wants to tuck his king away from the center, but did you need to play that move, King F1? What was the point?
I mean, Lawrence's brain speaks a language that I haven't fully understood yet. King F1. I mean, I'm not sure where he's going to G3 with the king G1, king H2, team on short style, but there's a few too many pieces left on the board for that. C5 by John. John's going to seize his opportunity here, sacking on B5, and that's one of the adjustments that I think he does have to make from his match against David. Now, he won that match in lopsided fashion, but in certain cases, he hesitated a little bit too much, and here we see him a little bit more willing to sack long-term for an initiative.
Yeah, because if you take what the pawn on D4 is, Justin played, this pawn is an isolated pawn. Black can consider bishop takes F3. I'm not sure I'd want to part with this wonderful bishop and long open diagonal, but it does shatter White's kingside structure. So knight b6 played first, saying I can take on F3 soon, but if I were Lawrence, I would retreat my bishop to E2, protecting this knight on F3 at some moment.
There can only be one Lawrence. You can't be Lawrence. You can't pretend to be Lawrence.
Hey man, I
can't even say if I were Lawrence.
I talked about this the last time Lawrence played. The band Lawrence is excellent. So, and a song of theirs that I really like is "It's Not All About You." So it really feels a little pointed at Mr. Trent, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost as if it was written for him. Now bishop G5. That bishop kind of ensconced in that square. Now F6 would be very, very weakening. I like this move, Queen B6, just bringing the queen out. This is looking, at least from a very practical perspective, very difficult to defend for White, within the context of a blitz game.
Yeah, it does feel easier to play for black because the king safety. The king on f1, where is it really going? You were joking about king g1, king h2, king g3, but it actually might go to h2. Just that way the rook on h1 feels active, but I would think a rook lift, rook h3 in the near future, just to do something with the rook. You can't sit here forever. f6 now looks like it might win a piece because the knight on e5 and bishop on g5 are under attack. You know that John's going to think about that, but watch out for knight to d7, forking the queen on b6 and the rook on f8. You could also consider knight takes g6 in some variations, but of course, knight d7 with the immediate oomph, hitting the rook, hitting the queen.
Yeah, and that's actually quite an annoying threat. I've been thinking about a6 for John, but I'm not a big fan of that. He goes for rook d8. He stops the threat of knight d7. It no longer comes with a fork. That actually might be very, very sensible. Now I think f6 is a very, very big threat. The bishop on b5 is also very loose. It's only defended by the queen. So all of Lawrence's minor pieces are kind of loose in the center. How does he resolve all of that? Maybe bishop c4, but then f6.
Yeah, f6 is... Well, actually, bishop c4, f6, knight takes g6. I will take your pawn e7 because your knight on d5 is pinned. So perhaps that's actually a tactic that Lawrence should be looking at here. And the bishop on c4, can I just... I want to take on e5 and take on c4, which actually just might be the thing that hurts white the most, because bishop e5, d e5, rook takes c4, and I follow with bishop a6. Your king is on f1.
Yeah, very nice idea. And that's another reason why John prudently decided not to hurry with a move like a6, because that square could be reserved for the bishop.
So another idea is bishop d3, getting ready to sacrifice your piece, because I want to take your pawn on g6 with my bishop, queen takes h5, and try to checkmate you over here on the king side. So bishop d3 hangs the d4 pawn in some variation. So it's getting very tricky. He starts with king to g1, and he's willing to allow f6.
Much like a cowboy in a Western, he's going straight in the direction of the bullets. f6, what is he intending? Maybe knight takes g6. Okay, knight d7. But now queen d6, I guess he wants knight c5.
Yeah, that knight will...
Very tricky.
That actually induced a big weakness on black's king side. And if this knight c5 idea works, it helps white's chances a lot. The bishop on g7 looks silly over there. Rook takes d7 is met by bishop takes d7, hitting your rook on the c8 square. But maybe that's a practical chance for black. Rook d7, bishop d7, fg5, bishop c8, and some kind of bishop c8. Like, I have three minor pieces for your two rooks, and it's not like the king on g1 is the happiest piece either.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. And those positions, you know, three minor pieces for a queen, three minor pieces for two rooks, very difficult to evaluate. Also because the rooks, and that's exactly what John goes for. I also like his time management. He's leaving himself enough time. Okay, Lawrence throwing in a check.
Oh, he wants to go hg5, rook h5, and mate this king.
But knight f4. But that's a pipe dream.
And actually, queen e6 check, I would have tried to trade the queens off instead of bishop e6 check. Because if we go back just a few moves here, queen e6.
First of all, HG, I think that's a huge blunder, but continue.
No, I was just saying trading the queens and then taking the rooks seemed a lot better, because you get into an end game where the two rooks can try to take on those minor pieces. Here you see with the queens on the board, and now the g2 square and the bishop on e6 is actually just hanging. I think Lawrence is completely lost now.
Much like Don Quixote, he's emerged from all those battles. And all he's facing are tilted windmills. Knight f4, forking the queen, the bishop defending h5. We see the shake of the head. I think this is just resigns for Lawrence. I just don't see a way to prolong this game.
How about... Yep, I got nothing. You can't even put a queen on d3, for instance. If you could go queen d3 and then the knight took on e6, just for argument's sake, then I have rook h5. But now here, after queen e3, just scoop up that bishop. You are up three minor pieces just for one rook. And of course, Lawrence is going to regret not taking the rook on c8.
Definitely. I'm not sure what the evaluation would have been then. I mean, it's understandable that he was riding the heat wave. He was riding that confidence, but he played h takes g5 fairly quickly. And those ideas that hinge on a very unusual mechanism like rook takes h5, especially with so many pieces on the board, you just got to double, triple, quadruple check that, because one tiny refutation and everything collapses just as it did.
Indeed. Props to John Bartholomew for, sacrificing a pawn, playing in a sort of un-John-like style, and coming out on top. So both the players, when thinking about game one, Lawrence played a technically very precise game to win an end game over JB. Now JB taking the tactics to Lawrence, What is going on? Is this role reversal Thursday?
Well, what did we see yesterday evening? We saw Teddy Coleman winning one time scramble after another. So who knows what's going to go down here, and Lawrence wisely resigns. I mean, nothing else left to play for. 1-1.
1-1 it is. And Lawrence going for a French. If John were to play E4, of course, John plays C4. He's a D4 player, pretty much through and through. And now Knight C3. Are we going to see an A6 again from Lawrence? Is he going back to
Well, this time Bishop E7, sort of another classical approach here. C6, Bishop D6 is a very, very solid system, aiming to, of course, trade off the dark squared bishops. This is, I mean, in my experience playing this with white, I found it very, very difficult to prove an advantage here for white, but I'm sure John has studied this. Now G4 is a sharp move. John chooses a slightly more peaceful approach, bringing the knight to G3 and probably the bishop to D3.
How shocked are you that John did not play G4
Extremely.
there?
I mean, for John to choose a positional continuation, Robert, I think that is a first. I think we should pause the match and honor this with a moment of silence.
And now knight f6 by Lawrence, H4. So I was about to say, we saw H4 by Lawrence in the previous game, which was kind of artificial. It was just like trying to make an attack out of nowhere. Here, H4 isn't quite Alpha Zero-like. It's more positional because... Sorry, go ahead.
No. You go ahead. I wasn't going to say anything of substance.
It's okay. I mean, that's what I'm here for. I don't want you to say things of substance.
No, I was going to say we saw H5 from some world champion-like figure on move 3. We see H4 here. Soon we might see 1H4 or 2H4. I mean, why don't we just throw those moves in at the start just to scratch that itch so that we can play some real chess?
I would be here for it. And now the pawn H4, people are looking at that probably like, wait, isn't that just going to be a goner once the knight moves from F6? And, well, what about knight E8? Like, can I go full greedy and just win your pawn H4?
Why not? I mean, that pawn, you know, that's why oftentimes in the Caro-Kann, when you do play H4, H5, you don't castle short, that pawn becomes weak. Lawrence starts by immobilizing John's queenside pawn minority. Now, that might backfire because that pawn on A4 now needs to be defended. But knight B6 here seems like a sensible way of doing that. And then I think he can play knight E8.
Yes, knight B6. The downside of that move is if the B file opens, you have the knight in front of the pawn on B7, so it can become a target. He plays queen A5, which makes a knight move from F6 less potent because the pawn H4 can actually be guarded more easily. And if I am Johnny, I'm thinking about bishop G5 just to try to pin this knight. There it is. Pin the knight on F6, protect the pawn preemptively on H4.
And F4?
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
And F4 and F5.
Of course. Now that black doesn't have the pawn H7, we've seen you, not you, Daniel, but you've done this too. We've seen the players in various matches go after the fianchetto pawn structure by trying to just hammer it away, chisel it down. And F4, F5 not only hits his pawn on G6, but threatens to open up the F file for a rook sitting very pretty on F1.
Indeed. And, you know, you mentioned yesterday, Robert, that, you know, you're lifelong friends with Teddy, and so you allow yourself a little bit more roasting. I've been friends with John for many, many years. We've taught together at many camps. So I'm going to allow myself the liberty of roasting him a little bit more than that of other competitors. So, you know, for John to play F4, the stars really, really need to align because he's going to look at that pawn on E3. He's going to determine that it's weak. And, you know, that's asking a lot. So here he decides to play completely on the other flank, A4. I actually don't dislike what he's doing. He can double on the B file. That pawn on B7 starts to look a little bit uncomfortable.
It really does. And a problem for black is where do your pieces belong? The knight would love to go to E4, but you look at that square, white has two knights covering it, so that would just lose a pawn. And if you play knight to B6, going after the A4 pawn, exactly what you said happens. Rook F to B1, and the B7 pawn is far more vital to this position than the A4 pawn, because the B7 pawn is the start of a pawn chain. So if B7 collapses, then C6 becomes weak. And now knight G4 by Lawrence, which is offering a bishop exchange. And there you see John capture, and now the rook on E7 protects B7. So now this knight on D7 can move out the way, and then you don't have to touch the B pawn and make the C pawn weaker.
Yeah, that's a nice harmonious way of defending, and at the same time bringing some pieces into the other flank. That knight on G4 is very annoying. Now, needless to say, it cannot be dislodged with F3 because the E3 pawn is once again incredibly weak and can simply be captured. John going for the queen trade with queen E2, and that serves two purposes: lessens the impact of pieces on the king side and also reinforces the attack on the b7 pawn. I like it.
I really like that move. And actually, the knight on g3 is the problem piece. We talk about this so frequently now. A pawn 3 squares away from a knight dominates that knight. This pawn on g6 is dominating the knight on g3 with the help of the pawn on d5 taking away the e4 square. So if Lawrence had captured on e2, then the g knight would have taken on e2, then gone to f4, then to d3, then into c5. That sounds like a long trek, but in reality, there's very little black can do to stop it. And once the knight lands on a square like c5, or if you have to stop me from playing knight to c5, you have a very defensive approach from black's point of view instead of an aggressive one.
Absolutely. And I think Lawrence doing the right thing by refraining from the queen trade. Once again, John's got to consistently find new ways to apply pressure on black's position. I'm not sure Lawrence has a clear plan of improvement in his own right, but maybe something like knight e6.
I would play queen c7 and hope that John misses queen h2 as a threat.
Well, that's quite sensible too. And after knight f4 there, maybe then you could play knight e6, once again, hoping that he takes on e6.
And that's
exactly what he does.
And he's also reinforcing the b7 pawn. So just in case, now this rook in e7 can move off of its square. So I like this move, queen c7. At g3, you know John's worried about sacrifices eventually on the e3 square. And if f takes e3, the g3 pawn becomes a target. Knight on e2 has to stay put for the time being. And I'm looking at this knight on f8. It's not doing anything down yet. I'm thinking knight e6, which threatens both pawn to g5 as an option. But I'm looking at knight g7, knight f5, and then I'm really going to Sacktown on e3.
I like it. And as you pointed out, that knight on e2 really holding the world on its shoulders. John's pressure looked very formidable on the b7 pawn, but now it's sort of evaporated. We have a piece on the queen side. I really like this maneuver, knight g7, knight f5. And e4 by John. He's trying to change the course of the game. Interesting decision. Now d takes e4, he plans to take with a knight, and then maybe crash through with d5. His pieces, from a purely positional standpoint, might be better placed. That rook on a7 is awkward. Oh, but by the way, d takes a4, knight a4. Maybe there's rook takes a4. Maybe I should watch what I say. That rook could all of a sudden jump in via the a file.
Yeah, you have to keep the corner of your eye on this pawn at all times. And with this pawn structure, f7, g6, h5, I'm looking at the dark squares. And you know that Lawrence is thinking, what if I get my knight kicked away from the g4 square? And a timely f3 could be devastating for Lawrence to meet. So, I wouldn't play f3 without really figuring out, okay, my pawn on g3 is safe and sound. It's not too weakening. I do have knights on e2 and e4 covering that g3 square. So f3 is a possibility just to land my knight on the f6 square.
Yep, it is. And that knight on e2, once again, sort of in the shadows, but it's doing that hero's duty of defending g3. This is a very critical moment for Lawrence. Notice the time situation. This time he is the one feeling the heat. He's got less than a minute.
And king f8, he's running away from any kind of knight f6 check.
And we've seen that in the last game with king f1. Now he's doing it with the other side.
And queen c3, he went knight to c3. I was in queen c3 trying to play d5 and mate on h8, but this knight, now d5 is very tempting. And look, now the king's on f8. f3, the knight can move away without knight f6 coming with check, winning the rook on d7. So that's another thing to keep in mind, as I kept mentioning the f6 square.
Yep, and that d4 pawn is hanging. So I feel like John should just throw his chips into the center of the table and play d5, because embarking on sort of passive defense with something like rook b4 just doesn't feel in the spirit of the position. With that being said, maybe rook b4 holds on. I would just play d5 very quickly, and my intuition tells me that white should have something here. All of his pieces are coordinated. That king on f8, certainly not out of the woods.
And John does have a lot of time. He's got a pretty sizable time advantage at this point, so he's being smart to use some of it right now, because this is a critical decision. It changes the entire nature of the game. He plays rook b4. Shocking that John would take the safer approach, and I put safer in quotes.
I was worried there about knight e5 and knight takes d4 actually, but no matter. Lawrence decides to reinforce the pressure straightforwardly with queen d8. This is also quite worrisome.
How do you protect that pawn? And c5 is a threat. Ooh, I just put
rook c1, I guess, but then your move c5 comes with great effect. That queen on d3 just completely in the way and pinned, and a huge liability.
So play d5. Just sacrifice the pawn.
Sack that pawn, plug the hole.
Yep, give black a nice later on. He goes knight e2. And maybe it's okay, but your knight e5 move still is tempting, isn't it?
It is, and then knight d4, and then mass simplification on the d4 square. Knight f3 check picks off the queen.
Although it's a bit different now because the b7 pawn will be hanging in many variations.
95 now, though. That's a fork.
Oh, gosh, 95
and
missed.
they just missed that thing.
Wait, knight takes c5. Now knight takes c5 for white.
Oh, and 92, queen e2. And he gets out of the pin.
And
that's
I don't know
big chance missed by Lawrence.
Wow, that was a fork that was just available. And after knight takes d4, there still is 95, isn't there?
Nice. After knight takes d4 here, 95. Maybe some 96 check and queen c3, but moot point. Now he does take on c5. John doesn't miss his opportunity. So is John all of a sudden better?
I don't know, but 92, queen e2, rook d2 is something that I'm looking at. Like, hey, can I go after your f2 pawn? But that king on f8 is worrying me, of course. I mean, the king is not happy to, after rook d2, there's queen f3, 96 check.
And rook e7, Lawrence, now queen f3, 95, queen f6 can be considered. Ooh. I feel like John's just got the much easier play here. It's hard to make a mistake. Queen b2 also merits consideration. Look at his pieces. All of a sudden, they're very well coordinated. I wouldn't count Lawrence out. White's king is not entirely out of the woods yet. 96 check is a threat here. 96 wins the queen.
96, exactly, win the queen. But that might be a smart sacrifice, all things considered. 96, I give up my queen on c8, and then I have a rook and a knight for the queen, and the white king is actually not safe. This is where you see, I don't know the trade on that square. I didn't like that.
Yep, now the pawn flies off. Still some counterplay, though, Robert, for black. Rook d1 check. It's not over yet.
It is not over. I would go king g8 just prophylactically to get my king safer because I'm worried about queen c3. There is king g8. And unfortunately,
the time is running out. That pawn has reached a6, and now it's going to reach a7.
You're not in time to go rook d6, rook f6, queen c6, rook a7. Hey, if that knight can help you attack that pawn, you win the pawn.
True, and that is a draw. If black can consolidate in that position, John wisely stopping knight c4.
Oh, here comes knight b8.
Queen b7. No, that doesn't do anything. I was thinking of some cute stuff, but still not a draw because
knight c7,
rook a7.
Oh, rook a7.
Oh, and knight b5. No, queen b8. Queen b8 on the rook. That was winning. That's winning too.
This is winning too, but you can make the mistake of trading too many pawns here because this can be a fortress.
Indeed,
if white misplays this.
We've seen queen e5 though.
That's it. That's
making an easy job for John and Lawrence. Yeah, wow. The shake of the head. Wow. That was quite the tense finale there. And Johnny's got to count his lucky stars. That 95 move, not to give Lawrence too much flack, but that is a move that he should see, especially after, the what he delivered in the pregame interviews.
I'm going to bring up the analysis board really quickly just to show that while this new game gets underway, because you're absolutely correct that this 95 tactic, forking the queen and the rook, I'm going to go all the way back in time to find that moment. Here we are, where the rook went to c4. There is a pin down the d file. Knight e5 simply wins in exchange, attacking the queen, attacking the rook. There's no way to capture this knight on e5 because the queen is en prise. So a missed opportunity by Lawrence, several more after that. But John converted very nicely. I actually liked his technique for the most part in that game. And now he has a 2-1 lead. He lost the first game, so he went -1. Now he's at +1. And for Lawrence, you have to stop the bleeding. You cannot go on tilt here because this match can get out of hand. If John Bartholomew has a lead in a match, he's such a solid player. I don't really see him giving that up.
Indeed. Lawrence is late on his payments. He's got to pay the Trent, and, he's just got to sit down, calm down, win this next game. But again, he's into what I would say are uncomfortable waters. Now, he's not losing a pawn for no compensation. He's sacking it. He's got the center. He's got the pressure. John definitely thinking about bishop b4 check here. And I deliberately, Robert, notice what I did there. I talked as much as I could after that terrible pun so that people would immediately forget what I just said.
I'm actually a little upset you did because I liked the pun. I was going to compliment it.
The one pun that you liked, I had to wash away with sentence after sentence of meaningless dribble.
Yeah, I mean, your self-deprecation is at all-time highs, and I feel a little bad. I feel like I've contributed to that. So I'm going to take it back a notch and say that was actually a good one. I approved of that one. So look at these words of affirmation that you're receiving from me. It's because we had such a fun time last night commentating Teddy versus Levy, and I know this is also going to be a very exciting match. So I think we're in a good friendly vibe right now, Danya. Don't be so hard on yourself.
Okay. Touche, my friend. And I just, out of the corner of my eye, said Lawrence performed some gymnastics on his chair. I think he doesn't seem very happy at the outcome of this, and I don't think he should be, because John, not only does he have the extra pawn, Lawrence doesn't have much to show for it. The center alone is not going to guarantee full compensation for the pawn. Or am I misreading this position?
But you also know that JB doesn't like even the thought of being attacked. So
True.
when I see bishops in D3 and D2 lined up at the black king side, I'm like, where's that king going? If I go to castle, will there be some kind of E5 and then maybe putting a knight on E4 and then sacrificing on H6? That sounds very far-fetched, especially in the current position. But it's not that easy for black to obtain activity for the pieces. You have to get a C5 break in order to feel really happy about your piece placement. But C5 runs the risk of just losing the pawn back, in which case, well, you're up a pawn. Now it's even amount of pawns, and you still have things to worry about. And I think Lawrence will consider pawn B4 just to stop any idea of C5.
Yeah, I like B4 clamping down on the C5 square. White's got to watch that B4 pawn himself, because if he loses that pawn, then things basically fall apart. But that pawn's not going to be easy to attack, because not only does the bishop guard it, if worse comes to worse, White's queen can shift over to B2 as well. I do think that John is threatening C5. Lawrence doesn't seem concerned about it. He throws B4 to the wind. What about C5 here? Does he want D5 sort of Moran style?
That's exactly what I was thinking of. And when you say Moran style, I didn't know if you're just putting an accent on moron or if you're talking about the opening Moran. But in this case,
Since I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the opening.
No, I know, my friend. You don't have to clarify. We're on the same page here. But the king is in the center. So what Lawrence's idea is, he's throwing caution to the wind. He wants to sacrifice another pawn, open up the E file, and JB says, not so fast, and plays E5. But I see a big problem with this position for black. And what I'm looking at is if I do get a bishop E7 or a bishop D6 and just stop this pawn and castle, I can't play G6 very easily because my pawn is on H6 and will be hanging in the case that I castle. So I think that black will not be able to castle for the foreseeable future, and that is certainly not JB style.
Definitely. I think that's very good observations. That pawn on H6 might seem imperceptible, unimportant. It is very important. With that being said, let's say, John, yep, that's what I was thinking, G6 and then either bishop D6 or bishop G7 and castle short.
But if your bishop's on D6, you're not castling short yet because your pawn H6 is hanging, right?
True. So let's say bishop G7 and then castle short. How is White going to respond here while he has a couple of tempi before black completes his development?
So the bishop on G7 makes C5 feel a little bit weaker, but not so weak that I feel like I can take advantage of. I kind of want to pile up on the E5 pawn, and I wish my knight could move from F3 so I could play pawn to F4. Right, F2 to F4 right now would be an extremely good move. It's like opening up the board, but I have to move my knight out the way. So is Lawrence going to go for knight H4, sack a piece with knight F5, and go for an all-out attack on the king side?
I could see him doing that. I could also see him playing something more peaceful, like queen C1 after bishop G7, trying to stop castling, although that just doesn't seem to quite have the desired effect. John is definitely thinking, I think, about where to position the bishop. Now, maybe he's going to go bishop D6 and basically say, you know what? My king's pretty safe in the center for the time being, with the center being closed. The danger there, as you pointed out, Robert, is something like knight H4 followed by either knight F5 or F4. The center is torn open very, very fast, and John can come to regret keeping his king in the center. He decides. And he plays
bishop G7. And actually, I was going to show a line. Bishop D6. Let's say I go queen C. Not queen C1 yet. I make some move like, I don't know, H3 or king F8. I go queen C1 to attack the H6 pawn. And you think that your king is going to go to G7 and protect it. Then ideas like knight H4 are really powerful, where I'm sacking a piece on F5 with a check to your king on G7, threatening to win the bishop on D6, the pawn H6. So if the king were to go to the G7 square, in those variations, then I'm really looking at the knight sack. So that's why John smartly plays bishop G7, castles his king, and now after queen C1, I think that he'll just play king to H7 and say, you're not getting this pawn, buddy. It's well protected. Indeed. Now.
I don't like that move H3 by Lawrence. I think that was way too slow. If he was planning to play positionally, at least go queen C1 immediately, force John to sweat a little bit, to work on having to castle, to make some concessions such as H5, which would have weakened the G5 square. Now, as it stands, Lawrence may be still preparing F4, but the medicine's going to be worse than the disease there. I just feel like John now has very firmly the upper hand.
He's also thinking about knight G4 as an option, just to say, hey, come on, take me on G4, open up the H file. And the H file doesn't look like anything right now, but that's a very common theme, especially in the Spanish, where you play knight G4, you take with the H pawn, and you just say your pawns are immobile on the king side, and I have this more aggressive attacking structure for white.
Yeah, I actually like knight g4. That's a very annoying move to deal with. For John, after knight g4, I would say knight takes g4.
Because you don't want to allow my knight sack, do you? Knight g4, h5, I'm going knight h6, and after king h7, I'm going knight f5. I'm sacking this knight. You're going to let me sack my knight, Danya. Just let it happen, buddy.
You know what, Robert? Because we've decided to be friendly, I would have let you do that in a real game. Let's just let the record show. But Lawrence, rook f2-1, he's keeping his options open for the time being. I suppose he's not in a huge hurry with the center being closed. What do you make of his approach here?
It also, I was about to say, gives the deep. Okay, knight g4 has
Definitely.
to be played. It feels like a must. There it is.
King h7 probably.
And then can I please put my knight on f5? But I actually don't know if the sacrifices work right now. I like the knight on e8 because it can go to d6. The knight is an excellent blockading piece. And so from the d6 square, it covers f5. It stops any kind of d5 to d6 for white. So knight e8 actually seems like a very good move.
Yeah, and I can feel sort of knight f5, knight h6, all these temptations, but you got to rein it in and actually choose something. I like queen c1. After h5,
Knight e3.
that structure looks very flimsy. Oh,
wow.
Very brave.
I'm still looking at knight e3 to go knight f5.
Absolutely.
But knight e3, there's knight d6. And after bishop g4, then I guess I can just move my rook and protect this knight. But somehow this queen on h4 feels like it's in kind of scary territory.
Yeah, I mean, Lawrence, now both of them basically under a minute. That queen on h4, when I first saw that position of the queen, I assumed Lawrence would have some way of trapping it. He goes king h2, very measured response. What is the idea of this move? I guess John is going to follow up with knight d6 and ask him that very question.
Yep.
Maybe he wants f4. I think drastic measures are required because John's not going to sleep on this forever. He's either going to play f5 himself or he's going to play c4. Lawrence does not have a millennium to orchestrate, some sort of counterplay on the king side.
And the time situation is one we should call attention to because right now John only has 35 seconds and we like his position more and more. I think objectively he has a fantastic position, but in a time scramble, it can go either way. But I like the flexibility of Black's position now. You have 3 different pawn moves coming up, either h5, f5, or c4. Now c4 comes in with a tempo. And what is the idea? c4, queen a3? Is he getting tricky over here, saying, hey, take my bishop on d3, I'll take your knight on d6?
Maybe he is. Although even at the end of that line, somehow, let's say c4, queen a3, cd, queen d6, and then knight c5. White's queen, I'm not sure if that's a blessing or a curse. John going for f5.
With the king on h7 and a bishop on d3, that's such a scary move to play.
It
but
is,
if he gets e4 in next, he closes the bishop down.
Right, and White has this one window of opportunity. I don't see what he can do. e4 is a big threat. John just driving in that wedge. Now Lawrence
bishop f4. Play bishop f4. Attack this knight on d6. There it is.
Now fg maybe. No, but then bishop d6. Okay.
Oh, the rook at a1's hanging for free.
Oh my goodness, he can just take it.
But then there's bishop d6, knight f5. He just got scared, right? Like he's just looking.
I don't think he saw it honestly, but maybe there was compensation there.
Now he moves rook f4 and then knight
and
g4.
fg with check.
Yep. That's just winning. But there's something that is invoking fear in his brain about playing f4 because it's a bishop on b1 and a king on h7.
Yeah, and John converting this soundly. I mean, this is still winning. That knight on g3 pinned. He's just mowing down all these pawns. I just don't see the activity for Lawrence, but
queen c7 coming. Yes. Take on c6 and play rook d6. Oh my gosh.
Rook f6.
But there was some knight f5 tactics. Maybe you're right.
Queen h. No, that doesn't work.
Oh gosh, what now?
What's going on here? Rook h6. No, knight f2 wins the queen.
Oh, wins the queen in the game. I mean, they're moving so quickly. I didn't even know what was happening.
Me neither.
I was like scanning for tactics. I heard you saying queen h. No, queen h. You wanted to make it attack.
I couldn't find anything quite, appealing. Maybe rook takes h6 check was a good practical chance, but White just didn't have enough firepower there.
Yeah, I'm going to show that game on the analysis board really quickly because it was a tactical battle towards the end there. And it felt like Lawrence had something because the king on h7 was very barren. And I know you were looking at some rook takes h6 check, king h6, queen h5, and the king, some queen g5 check, hoping to win the f5 pawn as well. And actually that looks pretty devious because if the king ever goes back to g8, so king h8, queen h6, king j8, there's bishop a2 check. A very timely move, saying your king is not escaping, at least not without giving up your rook over there. So an interesting position at the end, but time scrambles, crazy mistakes happen. And at the end there, Lawrence blundered his queen. So props to JB. I shouldn't even frame it like that. I wouldn't say Lawrence blundered his queen as much as JB consolidated extremely well. And then Lawrence couldn't find a saving grace in the time trouble.
Indeed, he pushed him off the board. You also misspoke. I wanted to correct you, Robert. You said Black's king looks pretty barren. I was going to say Black's king looks pretty Davis, but
no, that
was manufactured, wasn't it?
It was. It really was. Because who's going to think of Baron Davis in that scenario? And Baron Davis is awesome. And I know you're a Warriors fan, so you're reflecting on when they beat the Mavs in the first round, the big upset.
Exactly.
I know where you're going with this.
Exactly.
I get you, but the people aren't getting you right now. And what I'm not getting
we'll leave
either.
That to the people.
Yeah, well, I'm going to speak for the people because sometimes I just want to be the voice of reason and say, Danya, chill. You don't got to throw out Baron Davis.
In this metaphor, you'd be the knight that's going to come from C3 to E4 to C5, just a stabilizing force, telling people what's what and who's who. And that's exactly what I think John is trying to do.
And look at Lawrence. He's, I think, on the verge of full-on tilting. He's lost 3 straight games. John has hit the turkey. And I've actually bowled with John before. He's quite a good bowler. And the knight on E4 coming right to C5. Is this going to be 4 in a row?
I mean, that knight on C5 is vicious. That just weakness, it hurts to look at it. And John, I've observed the pattern of him drinking coffee. I feel like after every victory, his sip of coffee, at first it was a small sip, and then it was a vigorous swill. It was just, he was savoring that coffee at the end. And I think that's how modest John is. That is his form of celebration. More coffee into his veins, more caffeine. This is looking quite alarming for Lawrence indeed.
His bishop is about to get trapped in the center of the board because if white can play E4, which if you allow me to, I will, that bishop has very few retreating squares, the C6 square being the only one. And the knight and the bishop are competing for the same square. This knight on B4 has one safe retreat, C6. So now A3, knight C6, E4, but then the D4 pawn is hanging. So
but no rush.
Getting tricky.
No rush. Maybe A3, knight C6, bishop B2.
Gosh.
Or bishop B2 immediately.
Yes, I like bishop b2. Leave that knight on b4. Some of you may be saying, wait, that knight on b4 looks kind of threatening. It's an advanced square, but it's actually more vulnerable to attack than it is aggressive in nature. I mean, the knight has nothing to do over here. So castling kingside says, getting my king to safety, no knight c2 checks, nothing of that nature. I can play a3. Maybe I'll play bishop a3. Maybe I'll play bishop d2. I have options. So let's just keep calm and continue parrying off Black's pieces because Black doesn't even have a threat.
Yep. Keep calm, guys. Drink my Starbucks and, just got a nice position here. Let's try to convert. Bishop B2, bishop A3. The problem here is it's hard. I mean, practically speaking, maybe white's advantage is not even that vast, although I actually think it is. It's just hard to make a mistake here for white. Basically, any generally improving move is going to be a good one. Bishop B2, rook C1, so many of these improving moves. Lawrence constantly gasping for air here. It's just so hard to play this position with Black.
You're saying you don't like this rook on a7?
I love it. I think I will. If I were marooned on a desert island, I would need only the rook on a7 to be happy for the rest of my days.
I don't see how that rook's getting in the game.
And of course, a good co-commentator, but we'll get to that later.
Well, whoa. The d4 pawn. John, not worried about that one.
What kind of coffee is he drinking? I guess this is so overwhelming. Oh, there's no way Lawrence can survive this.
So bishop d4, what's the response after we trade pieces on d4? Is it bishop b2, then e5? I mean, I don't see...
Would not survive that position. I mean, I don't exactly see... Well, first of all, rook d4, bishop b2, and bishop takes h8 promises, to me at least, huge compensation for the pawn. So that's at a minimum. I'm sure that John is more than that, though.
I see what you're going. You're bishop b2, queen c5, bishop takes h8. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The two bishops are very strong. The king is in the center. The rook's still on a7, not doing anything. So that looks good. And it feels like there must be a way to take advantage of the pin. But if there isn't, and he takes on d4, I think that's a very smart decision.
It is. By
John, because it's so tempting to try to pile up on the pin piece. But if Black were able to play e5, knight c6, and then castle kingside, I mean, king safety is just so important. And the bishop wants to plant itself on f6. Play rook d1, go for a checkmate down the d file.
Yeah, and it's something that, the computer might frown on this, but you have to also understand the time management. Very, very prudent by John, leaving himself over 2 minutes. The rook on a7. Black is saddled with all of these humongous weaknesses, ranging from his king that's going to be stranded for the rest of the game, to the dark squares, to the light squares, to his discombobulated pieces. Defending this will require Herculean precision. And, Lawrence a little bit tilted to begin with. This is going to be a very, very tall order for him.
I just don't really see any good ideas because queen d2 hitting the h6 pawn is also going to be annoying. If you move the queen away from c5, queen e3 hits the rook on a7, hits that h6 pawn. So pretty much in every variation that I'm looking at, there's a problem with this h6 pawn, and more to the point, the dark squares. You have a dark square bishop from the white side, black does not, and I don't know what to do about this. The bishop on a8, the rook on a7, the knight on b4, not coordinating very well.
Not at all. And I mean, something like c6, rook d7 just looks so miserable. I mean, c6, a3, the knight is trapped. As you mentioned earlier, Robert, like all of black's pieces are fighting for the same resources, for the same two miserable squares. And even if he puts them on those squares, they're still miserable. So this is just hard to look at. And Lawrence trying his best. He's tenacious. I like the move queen e7, maybe trying to get c5 in. What should John do here to tighten the screws as maximally as possible? Maybe queen e3?
Yep. So he's going after the pawn. I was actually thinking about a3 instead of queen e3 because a3, knight c6, and e5, and I plant my bishop on f6. That's not going to be fun for black either. And
I like this, though.
I mean, everything looks good. So he has options, and he chooses this one because I guess e5, bishop f6 is coming at some point, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and bishop g7, queen h8, another idea. I mean, not only does he establish material equality, more importantly, he paves the way for absolute and crushing infiltration. Now Lawrence also down a minute on the clock.
e5. Okay, I actually sort of like that move.
h5 maybe?
h5 looks good. I mean, everything just looks
Bishop
so
g7.
nice.
It's just hard to make a mistake here for white. We talked about this at the start of the game. These huge positional advantages, it's so debilitating to play against them. And someone like John, very, very good at handling them as well. Knight
Bishop
c2,
h3.
though.
He's trying to take away the king's escape squares.
I don't know, but knight c2, knight d4.
I like that. And then the e4 pawn is hanging, and then the white king gets in some trouble. That feels like
g7.
I don't know, though. I mean, I'm agreeing with you, of course, that the black king is not going to be so happy. He takes that pawn e4. Is he just trying to run king d8, king c7, and
rook
pray for
e1.
survival?
Rook e1.
Yeah. F5?
Queen takes g6.
Yeah, I mean, even F3, right? Just
Yeah,
F3.
I mean, a bishop e4 is very much a daredevil move, but, Lawrence has flown a little bit too close to the sun here. And there we have it, the queen g6, bishop f5. The wheels are coming off, whichever way John plays.
And the bishop on h8 is a hero. It looks funny over there, but it's actually really helping out. And there are many moves here that are good. Queen b6, bishop takes f5 is a tactical move. If JB sees it, you can even trade queens and take on e5, but I definitely wouldn't do that.
Yeah, knight d3 there.
Even without knight d3, I'm just looking at an end game where the c pawn becomes passed. So queen, I don't know. What do you think is about queen d6 hitting?
I like queen b6 actually because that hits not only it makes contact with the rook, tying down black's queen, but also threatens queen b8 and queen c5. Now, very important to find a precise square. Queen e6 check maybe. Queen e7, queen c8 check. And then you cannot block on d8 because of queen takes c5. This is crushing.
Yeah, queen e6, one of those, hitting squares in both directions. E6 hits c8 and g8. And so the black queen becomes overwhelmed quite quickly. So queen e6 check looks very good. What else do you think about here?
You could have taken on c7. John does just that, though, because now, though, one last important moment, but bishop takes f5. All of white's pieces stream in. I think bishop f5 is just resigns.
Lawrence will not resign. He'll play a move like knight c2, I'm guessing, after...
First of all, John's got to play it. Maybe he's worried about rook c7 there?
Oh, rook c7.
But then bishop e6. That's bishop f5 is the sort of move you play intuitively because there are so many pieces around black's king. You got to trust in the natural laws of chess. But the rook a8.
Ooh.
What does white do there?
Rook a8. That was nice. Was that
maybe the laws of chess failed John there? I don't know.
They failed all of us. And if you're failing John Bartholomew, you're failing all of us.
Indeed. Now queen g8.
This is so
mops up everything. Rook e4.
This is a bishop on h8, and it just hasn't moved in a long time, but it's helping out. And
it's just chilling.
It is chilling.
Sipping on a margarita. It's just like, why not? Bishop f5.
This king is about to find itself in checkmate. So any kind of rook g4 is nice. After rook d1 check, you have to go king h2. It's the one final thing, right? You don't want to go into a diagonal and see some checks happen, but the position was so completely winning for John that Lawrence threw in the towel. And right now, John has won 4 straight games. He started off with a loss, and all of a sudden, it's been all John Bartholomew. Not surprised that John is in the lead, but definitely surprised by how this has happened.
Me too. And Lawrence he's played experimentally, he's played creatively, but in these critical tactical moments, he has underperformed. He has either played too slowly, or he's played a little bit too experimentally, as in the previous game. He's got to change the light bulb a little bit. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is that he's doing wrong from a general standpoint. John's just outplaying him.
Yep, he is.
And another sip of the coffee, even more vigorous than the last.
And Lawrence is going back for these queen c2 lines where after the capture on c4, he's going to regain the pawn unless black plays b5, but it's a very committal decision. So JB going for this solid structure. If he does give up the bishop on f3, white will have the bishop pair, but this kind of pawn structure with b7, c6, and f7, e6 makes the bishop on c4 not quite as powerful.
Yeah, and that's, in the Slav, it's easy to look at the center in a vacuum and say, well, white's definitely better. He's got that beautiful center, but that's part and parcel of what the Slav is all about. You have that nice sort of defensive construction, e6 and c6, and you can slowly apply pressure on white's center. That is part of a series of hypermodern openings like the Grunfeld, King's Indian. All of them allow your opponent to take the center, and then you try to attack the center with your pieces.
And so an eventual bishop g6 goes after that pawn e4, and white's pieces are not developed on the queen side. The knight on d2 and the knight on f3 fighting for the same square. The bishop on c1, the knight on e2, they're fighting each other because the bishop would love to leapfrog that knight and go right to e3, but you have to move the knight out of the way first. And so bishop g6 played. For Lawrence, I'm still looking at knight c4, and then probably bring a knight to e5 at the right moment. I'm thinking of knight h4 as well.
Yeah, me too. I like knight h4.
Mm-hmm. And after knight h4, you always have to look at tactics, and, well, e5.
Takes d3, knight d5? I'm not sure about that, Robert.
Yeah,
because he wants to put a knight on e4, maybe go knight g5, but that's very positionally risky to yield such a monstrous blockading square on d5.
And c5 at some moment will try to collapse the pawn chain, right? The d4 pawn is needed to protect e5, but as you're pointing out, h6 is a very good move to stop any sort of knight g5 threatening queen h7 check and mate.
Indeed, and that knight is sort of a one-trick pony, that idea of knight g5. Once it's evaporated, white is left with this huge positional concession that he's just made, yielding that outpost for the knight. I feel like Lawrence it's not that he's making impulsive decisions, but he's somehow overestimating some chances, underestimating others. Now c5 can be considered, and that's exactly what John does, wasting no time. As you pointed out, Robert, pawn center collapses. That knight on d5 is just incredible. As
somebody who plays the Alapin defense, or not defense, what's it called from the white side? The Alapin against Sicilian. The Alapin Sicilian. I think it's that basic. But you get these type of positions often, and white actually still has the potential to mount an attack. This queen can swing to g4, the rook starts in e2 to protect the f2 pawn, but the queen can swing over to the king side at a moment's notice, and black has no pieces protecting the king. So that is something that John has to be careful about, because after queen g4, you'll have to move like king h7 or king h8, and the queen comes to the h file, and at some point, I will take you on h6. I love sacrificing pieces that are not mine. Queen h6 prevents the queen to jump over to g4 because the rook on e2 is hanging.
Very true. That's a good point. Sometimes you get a little bit too carried away with the positional advantages and the queen side, and black's king is certainly not out of the woods. Now a move like b4 runs into knight c3 as well. So Lawrence has to find a way to disentangle that rook. He goes rook c2, but now rook c8 maybe, and that tension along the c file, I'm not sure that favors white.
Yeah, there are some discoveries. Bishop takes f2 with check if the rook is left on the c file, or if I pile up pressure on the c file with a rook c7, rook c8, and then still bishop takes f2 check ideas will be in the air. And yeah, you want to play maybe rook c4 to swing your piece along the fourth rank, but then there's still that bishop takes f2 check idea. So yeah, the trades favor black because white is really banking on an attack on the king side. You're not going to get it in the case of b4, bishop back to e7. He goes king h2. I don't know, Danya. It just feels like Lawrence is trying to will an attack into existence, and it just isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, king h2 is very, very sensible, obviously, bringing the king out of the pin. But, first of all, John can consider, knight e7 is an interesting defensive move. He's swinging the knight. Where is he swinging it? To f5 or to g6? Probably to f5.
These options.
Yeah, he does. But I'm not sure about that move. Because I like that knight on d5. I feel like he could have maybe played king h8, then dropped his bishop back to e7 and tried to organize as many trades as possible down the c file.
Is f2 just hanging here, or is there some? Oh, there's tactic.
Four ideas.
Exactly, bishop b4. So I'm giving up the pawn in f2, so I have bishop b4 hitting your knight, hitting your bishop, and I don't see a way to protect both. So that's a funny little tactical shot that Lawrence is relying on to allow him to finish his development. Maybe he will get his rook a to c1, and then all of a sudden it's white who's first to the c file. So something has gone wrong for John. This kind of knight e7 calm move, it did not feel like it was in the spirit of the position.
I agree. I feel like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That sometimes does apply to chess. Sometimes you try to over-improve the position of your pieces, and that's kind of what he's done here. Maybe he's got to find one accurate move here. I certainly don't think he's worse. Maybe bishop b6. I know it looks a little bit awkward, but I'm trying to get the heavy pieces off the board.
I don't mind that move at all. Bishop b6. Also, rook c6 still comes to mind as a way to double in the c file and on a safe protected square. But anytime you put a rook on c6, I'm just looking at a b4 and eventually a b5. I don't have it available to me just yet, but I'm still keeping that option alive. So rook to d8 going for the other open file, but rook c1 now?
Yeah, that rook on c8 a little bit loose. He could still move his bishop back, technically. But something about that feels a little bit off.
And bishop takes f2 is still not possible because bishop b4. And while the rook on c2 can't take on f2 because the rook on c1 is hanging, there's... Wait a second. You can't move the knight.
Are we sure about that?
I'm not positive, but it looks like white gets out of that.
So I was thinking bishop f2, bishop b4, rook c2. What do you take with?
With the rook?
Queen f1. Bishop b7 and rook d1 you have mate on c8.
Exactly. My queen on
I was just testing your tactics. I know you've been a little rusty on those puzzles, so I figured I'd manufacture one out of this game.
Yep. And the queen on e4 is perfectly placed, taking away the king's escape score. We go back to the live position here. And no move yet by JB after rook a to c1. He is now down, minute and a half on the clock. And that's not a good look, especially as the position seems to be picking up for Lawrence Trent.
It does, and the initiative fully on his side, even if objectively speaking, queen b6 playing with some serious fire here. That bishop on c5 almost out of squares. It's only got f2. Maybe that's enough, though.
It looks suspicious. Queen h4 comes to mind, keeping the bishop honest to the knight on e7, but then I'm inviting a knight f5, knight g6 with a tempo. So it won't work out the way I would like.
Something looks very wrong about this move.
That was queen a4 with bishop a5 to follow. Also sort of in the air.
Yeah, rook c5, bishop b3. There's rook takes c1.
Rook c5, and there has to be something here.
There's got to be something. I just feel it, but
there simply must.
Putting one's finger on it is hard. I don't feel like that's it, although it might be. Just preparing b4.
Hold up. My for some reason crashed. We're back. Wow, that was an inopportune moment for... that's happened, but we're back. And bishop e1. No, that can't be right. That cannot.
That is very ingenious, Robert. I think I don't see a defense to b4, and I think neither does John.
How about and b? Okay, well the knight does protect the rook on c8. So
yeah, e4. What if a4? Where does the queen go? Queen b6. There's b4, and that square is defended twice.
Yeah, you're just trapping the bishop after a4. And he goes queen h4, but
still the pressure goes on. You can't move the knight because of b4, but knight f5.
No, knight f5, rook takes c5. Oh, my
knight
rook on c1 is hanging. You're right, my rook on c1 is hanging. So queen should go back to e4.
Maybe I'm blind, but a4 just seemed winning on the spot.
No, I think you're absolutely correct there. And so where does the queen go now? I would go back to e4.
Yes.
Because you still have a pin along the c file. And then if you see a4, you're happy. But it seems like he's just not seeing the move a4.
Right. And after queen e4, John's, I'm sure, furiously looking for alternatives to knight e7, which I personally do not see. Maybe rook to c6 holds on, because the critical thing is that rook on c8 needs to be on a better defended square. At the moment, it's defended only by its colleague, but that's not enough. But queen c4, you can just move the queen away. And worse comes to worse, and queen e8, wait a minute, but now b4.
b4, and just take everything along the c file.
That was the worst square to put the queen on. It seems like the rook is now better defended, but in reality, the opposite is true, because that queen is going to get pinned.
And we see that
Queen c3.
e5, just queen c3, exactly. You just stay on the c file, and that you have all of your ammunition. Oh. What? Wow.
Are we crazy, or is Lawrence crazy?
I think it's Lawrence. He does win a pawn in this variation. Queen
but
e8
look
check.
at Black's pieces now.
Queen
Queen
e8
and queen f7. Okay. Still, though.
There's bishop f2 there, right? So Black has counterplay because they have two pawns.
Indeed. I wouldn't count John out here. Takes
But
f2, takes e6, knight e3. This could turn in Black's favor.
Okay, he's got 93. G2 is bishop G1 check. Queen
Bishop
G2 is mate.
G1 with a vicious threat. Bishop G3 is also potential threat.
Is there even a move here?
He's dipping down 7. He takes.
And
what to do now? He's got no checks.
There's no checks.
Oh my goodness.
You called it.
What a reversal of fortune.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. That doesn't help.
Queen C6, the only move of the night.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh, Danya. Danya. This
John
is
barely concealing a smile. Here comes the coffee sip, I guarantee you.
I mean, for Lawrence, he must be gutted. And he just, was playing a game where he was, at first, maybe out of the opening, we didn't love his position. Then all of a sudden, he doubled on the C file, should be winning material, and all in time trouble, all chaos happened, and Lawrence was not able to keep up. So the trash talk that we heard before the match, I don't think it's paying off for Lawrence Trent.
I think it glanced off of John, and John as unaffected as ever. Actually, no sip of the coffee here, so maybe he's changing his habits. We see Lawrence looking hither and thither and here and there and shaking his head this way and that way. But that was, so many opportunities, one after the other. First a4, then b4, then at the very end, just queen c3 and queen takes c8. That is very straightforward stuff. Lawrence has got to be thoroughly disappointed with this play here.
For sure. And Lawrence coming out with his bishop on g7, saying, my bishop should provide me some compensation, but this pawn on d6 is a real weakness. And already ideas with knight to b5, knight to e4 come to mind, and the pawn on d6 could just fall at any moment here.
Yeah, this is, this is just already looking very nasty, right? With that pawn on d6, you can never develop the knight to d7. That's one of the problems, with the Benoni as a whole. If that pawn wasn't a weakness, everybody would play the Benoni, and that is not a move you want to make if you're doing well.
Knight c8, just the ultra defensive move, protecting d6, but moving backwards. Your rook on a8, that is not even a bystander. It's not even in the stadium of this game. It's just waiting outside because it's not going to do anything for a while. And you move your knight to d7, down goes your d6 pawn. You move your knight to a6, well, your knight's on the rim. It doesn't exactly look like the most promising piece. So unfortunately for Lawrence, he's in full tilt. John has won 5 straight games after losing the first one, and he wants to pick up a 6th straight.
And Lawrence IM Bartholomew trying to make the most out of the situation.
Would you play queen b3 here?
Queen b3, and you're not worried about bishop f3 because that pressure on d6 outweighs everything else. I really like that move.
Although if I trade on b3, take on f3, play rook d8, what I'm trying to say is the bishop on g7 is so strong that there perhaps is some counterplay in endgames, but actually I'm seeing a refutation very clearly. In the case of queen b3 takes bishop f3, gf, rook d8, then there's bishop g5 with knight f6 check, and just no space for black, and look at your queenside pieces.
Indeed, those knights. h3 by John, I like that as well, because the last thing you're concerned about is that pawn on b2, but Lawrence trying to get his knight to e5. I think that's sort of his last chance. Against knight e5, though, John's probably going to capture that, play knight f6 check, similar to the line you mentioned. Definite advantage for white. question is, can black hold that position together?
And I would consider after bishop e5, even h4. We see this fianchetto pawn structure, just trying to go h5 and get this knight f6 check at the most precise moment possible. Instead, JB goes queen g3, hoping that d6 remains the weakness. But knight e7, probably? Knight e7
but
to go to f5.
Still knight d6.
Ah. You have
and that's a threat,
up.
actually, because knight d3, there's knight c8.
That's actually a really funny line. So I can't give my knight to f5, and if that's the case, then I'm very unhappy with these developments.
And I don't see, I mean, that's a very strong move, actually, resisting the temptation to take that knight, which many of us would do automatically. Because, black could play rook e8 here, but among other things, John could play something relatively slow like rook e2 and double on the e file. He still has all of these positional advantages. That knight on e5 alone is not going to save black's life. No, it will not. And knight takes d3. Perhaps that's just the pill you have to swallow here, is your pawn d6 is just an eyesore, and it's going to remain that way. But at least if you take on d3, your opponent doesn't have the bishop pair, and the b2 pawn can be captured. Maybe knight b3 and just queen takes b2. Just, oh gosh. Oh, I gotta cover my eyes.
Oh, I mean, this bishop on g7. It's, you know what you told me yesterday, Donna? Use that expression. With every, I don't remember the exact wording, but with every bad bishop, there's a good pawn.
Oh, bad bishops defend good pawns?
Yes, that's it. Does that bad bishop defend a good pawn? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's a bad bishop defending a terrible pawn. And, we laugh, but it's never that easy to crash through in these positions. It's definitely an eyesore, but it's relatively solid. I don't think you want to take on e5 because Lawrence is going to take with a d pawn, and he's going to slide that knight over to d6, and he's going to start breathing a little bit easier. So John's going to react precisely here. Maybe just bishop f1, eventually play for f4, dislodging that knight from e5.
I like bishop f1. Just think, your knight on e5, it looks like a great piece, but as you're pointing out, when white plays f2 to f4, I'm just kicking the knight away. And I want you to take my pawn on b2, because if you take on b2, I have rook b1, rook takes b7, and then that rook swings into an attack. So bishop f1 looks like a very smart move. h4 still comes to mind as a way to just plow through the black king side with h5 next. And ultimately, he chooses b3.
This is just quintessential JB. He's not worried about any potential f5s. He's even happy to sack an exchange there. This is probably going to be the last game of the 5-minute match. So Lawrence would love to pull some sort of a miracle here. And it might start with a move f5. Do you think John's going to... No, he's not going to sack on e5 there. What is he planning against f5 exactly?
He's just going to move his rook off the a1 square, but then queen a5 comes. So actually, I like f5 a lot. And Lawrence wants to keep that square open for the knight, I'm guessing. I know white went knight d2 to stop knight f5 because I'll capture you on f5. But look what John's doing these last few moves. I mean, bishop back to c2, knight back to d2. It does feel like he doesn't have a firm grasp on this position.
Yep, and Lawrence, king h8, showing a little bit of confidence here. That's a generally good multi-purpose move, just tucking the king away. I like h4, though. He's stopping any potential g5 threats. And against f5 now, there could be h5 softening up black's kingside pawn structure.
For sure. And the move h5 is always one that black is going to be on the lookout for, because not only is hg a threat, h6 trapping the bishop, especially with the king on h8, but h5 is meant by g5. So that's why Lawrence, he can play a move like queen to d8. He will push his pawn in response. And unfortunately for JB, he cannot line the queen and the bishop up on the b1, h7 diagonal because the knight on e5 covers the d3 square. But h5, h5, g5, bishop e5, d5, queen d3, there's f5. And all of a sudden, black's pieces come to life with e4 next. And the bishop is very happy on the long diagonal.
Yeah, I was thinking about something as crazy as h5, g5, h6. Bishop takes h6, queen h3. But number one, that's not in John's style. Number two, we've seen all sorts of things happen. So who knows? Maybe he will play h6, rip open. Oh, no, h6 bishop. That looks very wrong somehow.
This looks...
Something about this looks off, but I can't put my finger on it because...
I wouldn't touch the h pawn yet. Because I can keep hg6 open and I keep h6 open. But for now, I want to find a good weighting like rook e2, then rook to e1. But is black going to take on h5, play knight e7 to g6?
Yeah, that's what I'd be worried about. That's why I thought maybe you can drive h6 in, which he does. The problem is if you take on e5 and then take twice, black is obviously not going to capture with the bishop and get checkmated. He has some f4 ideas. Maybe concretely that actually does work out for John. I'm not sure. He tries it.
Okay.
I guess we'll see.
I'm taking with the d pawn, and after rook takes c5, playing queen
course.
d6 or something. But then you
I
go
can't believe he's
f4.
thinking about this.
What other move is possible here?
Okay, thank God. Now queen d6 maybe.
That's what I'm looking at. Queen
But then
d6,
f4.
f4. Exactly.
what a
We're on the
move.
same wavelength here. But there actually are some tactics here. Like queen d6, f4. I can't get away with knight takes d5 like I want to. But my whole point was if knight d5 you take with the pawn, then I have rook takes e5, f takes e5, bishop takes e5, and your rook on a1 is hanging
Ooh.
queen on g3.
Very interesting. But yeah, that's actually a very strong idea.
So knight c6 maybe instead of knight d5? Because knight d5 is just
opening
rook
up that
takes
d
d5.
file is again, yeah, knight d5, rook d5, exactly.
Knight c6?
What a move. And there's nothing, rook e8, rook e8. It goes, oh no, not this way. Rook e1 now. He's not even concerned about that pawn on h6. He can drive that rook further down to e6. The rook on e8 is hanging, by the way.
Yes, it is.
It literally is hanging.
So knight c6 was definitely a better move than knight to g8.
Look at those snappers.
Gosh, those are such nice pawns.
E6 and d6 and e7 and d7. This is all just throttling black's position here.
Okay, but now d7 hangs the e6 pawn, and
But
e7,
E7
f. Oh, can't go f4. My rook's.
But by the way, d7 not a move because of queen d4 check. What a
Ooh.
trap by Lawrence. He's got to go knight f3. Queen d3.
Queen e3, which is actually a very, very good
Very
move here.
strong.
And if there's no queen d4 check, it is d7 next. Are there any tricky things that Lawrence can do, like a knight g8, and after d7 take with the e rook and somehow take on e1? You know, like
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
It
Nothing
doesn't
works.
because after rook e7, you could take once on e7 and then promote.
Exactly.
I don't even see any traps. The problem is, I mean, John is very low on time. Maybe queen h4, but then knight f3 comes in, attacking the queen, defending the rook.
I was
I
just
just
thinking
don't
of some
see
kind
anything.
of
Rook
knight
e7
G-
maybe immediately.
it's just such a sad move to play.
I know.
And I just take with the d pawn and queen d8 check you, and
Right.
we're going to be down a piece in an endgame.
True. But I feel
Maybe
like that's
it's holdable.
It's the only way to prolong the game. Otherwise, that's a second queen for white, and then the position plays itself. Either way, finally Lawrence makes that decision.
And queen d8 check. Oh, I would have played queen d8 and traded.
Definitely forcing the queen trade.
Because the king on g1 is actually not a very safe piece, and the bishop on c2 is useless. So you need this bishop to get to d5, and I don't know how you do that.
Bishop d1 maybe. Yep.
Okay, I was thinking b4, bishop a4, but perhaps this is smarter. Getting the bishop around to protect the white king. And that's what John does. But 5 seconds left for John. Lawrence
Indeed.
is I don't like the pawn
that's
on
another
G3.
weakening move, but I'm not sure about king h7. Now knight g5 check is in the mix.
Yeah, that was a very good move, bishop
Like
h3.
back. I don't know why he
bishop-
didn't take and play queen d7 check.
This is just time scramble. That's all that's happening
Indeed.
here. And do I take on e1 and just try to draw this endgame?
No,
queen
you got to
d6.
go for
queen
it. Now,
g3.
Queen g3, knight g5. I'm not sure what's going on.
King g7.
Queen d7, knight
King
king h6, knight f7.
King f6. King f6. King f6. Oh,
Knight
knight
h7. And
Oh
queen
my
c7
gosh,
with
knight
the
7.
queen.
Knight
Oh,
7
you-
here, same thing.
Same thing. He wins the queen with queen c7.
You go king g7.
Oh, it doesn't.
It's king h6.
Oh my goodness.
What can you do here? There has to be something.
There has to be something, but I don't think John's.
Oh,
He will. Queen
plays on.
f8.
Queen f8.
Oh, queen
and
f8
it's a
was
draw.
winning.
Queen f8 was winning on the spot.
Definitely on the spot. Yeah.
Queen f8, king g5, then knight f3 check.
Knight f3 and
King
queen
f4,
b8.
queen d6 exactly, and I win your queen. So we were kept looking at these lines where the queen gave the king a check and the black queen was behind it. But John, time scramble. He's up so many points in the match. He probably said, "I don't see anything right now. I have 2 seconds left. Let's make a
Exactly.
draw." So everybody, we have a big lead for John Bartholomew. We will be back in a few minutes after this short break, and when we return, we'll get into the 3-minute portion to see if Lawrence Trent can make a comeback. Be right back. Well, we'd be remiss not to talk about the daily question, because today's question is particularly apt for these players. It is, what is the greatest chess insult you have ever heard? And Danya, I have a great story about this, but I'm curious. You have any good ones?
I have several candidates, but I want to hear yours. Maybe that'll get my creative juices flowing. Let's hear it, Robert.
I guess this could be applied to non-chess as well, but Emery Tate, may he rest in peace, what a fabulous player. He won a game. I won't name the victim of one of the fine attacking combinations that Emery Tate was able to uncork. And he goes after the game, a little while later, he goes, I just want to congratulate you for being on the losing end of one of my finest victories ever. And I was just like, there are so few people in the world who could say that, deliver it with a straight face, and mean it sincerely, and also not get, just absolutely punched in response to that. And Emery was just that type of guy, and it was one of the most hilarious things ever. Needless to say, his opponent was really, really, really pissed off.
That's very funny. I have a quick one before the games begin. Back in the Mechanics Institute Chess Club in San Francisco, where I grew up playing, there was a 1700 who was known for his barbs and for, hazing the youth who entered the club. And I was around 1400, up a piece against him and nursing this piece advantage move after could not convert. Eventually we reach move, 35th move up a piece. I haven't made any progress. And I make a move and he says, would you like to offer a draw? And I felt the anger boiling in my cheeks. And at that point, I turned around and I won that game in 10 moves. But not quite an insult, just pretty funny phrase.
You just wanted to brag about a victory that you had when you were 1400. That's what I'm getting out of the story.
I did. Well, I had such few victories when I was 1400. You got to let me brag about one of the only ones I had.
I mean, more power to you, buddy.
I have, as the games begin, just one very, very quick one. One of my first remembrances of the mechanics was someone who swindled me, and he actually wrote 1-0 on the score sheet before he won the game, and that made me so angry. I cannot describe how angry I was at that. That was the ultimate slight. That ruined my chess career forever.
I was waiting for you to make a joke about how, the biggest insult is my chess play. So I was waiting for that. I was honestly a little disappointed that you are now on such friendly terms with me, that you're not just calling me out and making me the butt of your jokes. But I sort of appreciate it in a way. I mean, my feelings can only take so much. I know I seem like this guy who can handle anything when, my co-commentators are delivering awful puns and just begging me to stop being serious. But I do want to thank you for not throwing me under the bus here.
You're very welcome. I'm always there for you, Grandmaster Hess. And we seem to be, okay, there comes Lawrence, and the game should kick off any moment. And here they go. Lawrence of the white pieces. He has got to make a statement early, and he has got to make a statement fast. He's got a lot of time, but a 4-point advantage that's a pretty big one to surmount, and he's got to start early.
He certainly does. And matches like these are very difficult because Lawrence won the first game. So you win that first game, you're like, hey, I can do this. John's the number 1 seed. He's really tough, but I have a lead. Then you lose 5 games in a row and you have no confidence in yourself. So the fact that Lawrence saved that last position, we kind of heard him a little bit during our break. He was not happy with his play. That's clear. And this bishop on e6, is this still some kind of odd theory?
I suppose he wants to play g6, bishop g7, or bishop d5. That's even better. And e6, man, this has gone already wrong for Lawrence. Look at that bishop. And once he plays e6, that pawn wedge on the queen side, that phalanx, a5, bishop. Okay, I feel like Lawrence has to do this.
Well, I thought he was going to move his knight, play f4, f5, and just try to expand that way. But I guess he's going to go f4, f5. And the point is, now g6, I might sacrifice on that square at some moment. So the fact that your pawn's on h6 can backfire.
Yeah, I mean, bishop d5. Now, Lawrence has got to find a couple of very accurate moves to keep the initiative going. As soon as the initiative is extinguished, 2 pawns up for black, the game could virtually be over. What about e6 for John? I'm not exactly seeing what the follow-up is for Lawrence.
There might be bishop h5. I'm looking at bishop h5.
G6.
I don't know if... Yeah, I mean, you know me. Come on. What do you think I'm going to do if you go g6?
Resign. Would you like to offer a draw?
Oh, I would love to. You're not going to take it, though. So g6 coming. And what is the response? I mean, sacrificing clearly can't be. Oh, wait a second. What do I take with the... No, I don't have a follow-up. I'm trying so hard to make the sacrifice happen. But bishop g6, f g6, I can't get my queen to g6 in time because the black queen will just go to f6. And if I take on g6 the knight, fg, bishop g6, king d7, the black king runs the safety.
Well, as they used to say back in the ICC days, resign button is on your right. I've received that a couple of times.
That's a pretty good insult.
That is, yeah, I just remember that. And I remember thinking, oh, that's pretty witty. And I actually told someone that one time. And I told that to the wrong person because what came out of that person's keyboard, I shall not reproduce anytime soon.
It seems like it's stuck with you. So clearly it's made an impact. And look at this, bishop a3, bishop f8, bishop c1. If we see a repetition here, that would be hilarious.
That would actually be very funny. There would be something comedic about that for sure. But I don't see a way for white to avoid it because you cannot allow castles. John's fine with the draw as well. This is hilarious.
Yeah, you're right though. You cannot allow this king to get to safety castling, and the bishop on c1 is really annoying because the bishop can't come to e7 so easily without the pawn on h6 being a target. So you will not be able to castle so quickly. And we see a draw by repetition with bishop a3, bishop c1, bishop g7, bishop f8. What a hilarious draw!
That is one of the most original repetitions that I have seen. I mean, maybe not ever, but definitely in the near past.
What do you think about this?
Dutch, rolling out the Dutch.
What do you think about this stonewall Dutch that we're seeing here? F5, D5. You've firm control over the E4 square, but of course the E5 square is one that white is going to take advantage of. And just generally speaking, for people who may not be so familiar with the Dutch, you look at this position, it kind of looks like black is playing checkers with all these pawns in the light squares, and that makes the dark squares weak. And on the other hand, white can stop a piece from going to e4 with a pawn to f3. And another thing, and Danya, of course, I'm going to throw it to you in a second, but if bishop takes f4, sometimes white plays e takes f4, giving yourself double pawns. Because if this pawn takes on f4, then I have the semi-open e file, and you have this really ugly backward pawn on e6. And as mentioned, I can play f3 to prevent you from clogging the e4 square. So Danya, over to you. What's your experience like in the Dutch?
Those are all good points. I've never dared playing the Dutch with black. I, of course, have faced it with the white pieces. John playing very creatively. He's mixing several different plans. I actually thought he was going to go for f3, e4, but John's trying to switch to the conventional idea of going c4. Now, the issue is he has, of course, created a weakness on the b4 square. Not particularly significant at the moment. That knight on a2, you know, as awkward as it looks, it is guarding that square. So it's probably about equal. I mean, I don't see Lawrence being worse here. c5 can come at some point. There we have it. I don't like the way John has played this. I feel like he's mixed up two fundamentally different plans. If he has the knight on c3, then prepare f3, e4. If you're going c4, then play classically. He's tried to combine the two. I don't know how this is going. Maybe he's totally fine here.
I think black is doing well because the knight on a2 in particular, that's a suspicious piece. It's not doing anything, and now it comes back to c3. But if we look at this position, you were talking about this, Danya. I'm in complete agreement. The b4 square. When you look at knights, you think, can I get an outpost? What's an outpost? A square where a pawn can't kick it, and preferably where a piece can't kick it either. And so if I get a knight to b4 and take your knight on e2 with my bishop on b7, and we trade those minor pieces, I will have a knight in a dark square that can stay there for the rest of the game. Now, is that the best outpost in the world? No, of course not. But it is an outpost nonetheless, and that causes white some consternation. And now he takes on d4. Watch out for the open d file where there's a queen and for each side, and then two minor pieces for white. But I'm thinking of eventually swinging my queen to the king side for black. My bishop on b7 wants to line up with the queen to deliver checkmating threats.
Definitely. Now king h8 to be considered, followed by e5 and queen g6, as you point out. The queen and the bishop, just a lethal combination.
Oh, nice.
196.
Wait, queen c6. Knight f4.
Oh, my goodness.
Knight f4.
Another one just does not go Lawrence's way in terms of the tactics.
And
rook d8, though, I wouldn't lose hope here. There's still some activity.
For sure. This queen and bishop lined up on g2. I mean,
h5, though.
Queen of 94, maybe?
Bishop e6.
Oh, I knew you were about to do that. I was about to say that you have a checkmating threat, and then you do it. So knight e4, bishop e6. No matter how I take on c3, it doesn't matter because knight g6 is checkmate. The h pawn is pinned. So Donnie and I had the same checkmate on the brain there.
Is there e4 with the idea of knight g6 check?
Oh my gosh. e4, knight takes e4, knight g6. queen g6, queen hg6, rook h3, check, and mate. And there's some lines where black can consider sacrificing the queen for all these pieces. John
with rook c1.
Can I go g5, or is that too much?
No, I mean, I think these situations, you got to act decisively. G5, maybe knight e2. That queen on h5 is kind of annoying, actually. It's hard to dislodge. And knight e2, maybe the knight can swing to d4.
And I would love to play rook d6 and rook d6 over to h6 through my queen, but of course that's not how chess works. So unfortunately for black, you need to kick that queen out, and a rook to h6 would do so, but the queen on f6 is just kind of in the way. f4 trying to go f3, blasting the king side open. He takes once, and he's going to go f3 himself, but then there's rook d7, rook g7.
Exactly, and that pawn on f3 plugs the immediate diagonal, stops the immediate threats, but bishop takes f3 sacrifices are constantly looming in the air. So I actually, from a practical standpoint, I like Lawrence's position. I think he's got very serious pressure going. That knight on e2 also completely dominated. Can't go to g3, can't go to d4. Lawrence has got to be very precise here, but I like his position. He's got a big initiative.
And there's some kind of knight takes b3 tactics. The bishop will be overloaded protecting the knight on e2. And that's just something I'm keeping in mind. Black would like to trade the bishops because the
knight
d3
f4
pawn becomes a weakness. Knight f4, the rook on e8 is hanging, so knight f4.
And if rook e5, knight g6.
Oh, that is so nasty. Rook e5, knight g6. The queen has to take, and then the rook is hanging on e5. That looks like a problem. So can the rook go anywhere useful? Not really. Rook e3 attacks the f3 pawn, but not
maybe.
Still doesn't do enough.
Now just rook d6 is another follow-up, potentially trying to... Okay, John with queen h4, very prudent.
So now the f3 pawn is hanging if you have to move your knight away to square like h3, but the knight's coming to h5. And now it's the black king that might get checkmated.
Goes rook e5 now. For example, rook d8, first of all, very annoying little move.
Oof. I wouldn't call that a little move. That's a pretty big move.
Yeah, pretty big move. But now, he could have taken and gone queen d4.
Oh, was that a piece?
That was a piece. Oh, my goodness.
Miss an opportunity.
Rook e7. Robert, rook e7, queen e7.
Oh, my gosh. Rook e7.
He does it. Look at the man go. What a beast.
Dude, you're inspiring him. Rook e7 played, finding this wonderful knight g6 tactic. And queen d4 check. There's problems you're going to get mated on h7 before you could pick up this knight on f4. So it looks like... How rook takes f4 here? Wait a second.
Rook f4.
Rook f4.
G7, rook g7.
You made... Wait. Oh,
and rook g5.
Yeah, I was like... I'm trying, man. I'm trying, but there's no hope. JB...
And I'm sorry to get so worked up. These tactics just really excite me. That's what I live for.
I appreciate it. I'm getting hyped because you're getting hyped. The match score isn't, the most even of the matches we've seen. But right now, JB is just bringing it to Lawrence, and rook takes g7, as you point out.
Wins the game.
Take on g5 next. And
the speed with which John found. Rook g8 checkmate. Okay,
hard
John
to miss that one.
There we go.
Wow. Hey, Danya, your tactics were on fire that game.
I mean, the thing is, once you notice the kernel, knight g6, then all of the tactics are just variations on a theme. And John finding rook e7, I am very impressed at that.
That was awesome. And
what a game.
He missed that one opportunity Lawrence did to get that queen d4 check, picking up the knight on f4. And after that, John has some flair. That was a flashy way to win the game. And we've seen Lawrence throwing his kingside pawns at John. He needs a win. And, a draw and a loss at this point, plenty of time in the 3-minute portion. But the issue is that Lawrence is not the favorite in bullet either. So he can't rely on a comeback in bullet because John is so strong in the bullet time controls. So Lawrence needs wins, and he needs them now. Actually, he needs them like 3 games ago.
Exactly. And he's playing the Jababa London, which, was a guest, I think, in the match between, who was it? Was it Alina and Eric? I'm not sure. It occurred before. I played myself with white occasionally. It's a very interesting system. White has expanded on the king side. Now, that's both a blessing and a curse. Those pawns, under the right circumstances, could also become very, very weak. Another idea for black, sack on b7, go e5 as quickly as possible, try to blast open the center. But that's actually hard to achieve. Oh, he can castle here because queen b7, there's knight a5 trapping the queen.
It's always hilarious when the queen gets trapped like that, but it's a thematic queen trap. But then it's queen takes a8. Queen a8, bishop takes d6. And while black is certainly better, white has the last compensation of a bishop, rook, and pawn for the queen.
Yeah. Knight a5 is also good, though. b5, I just don't see it here. Because knight b5, ab queen b5, simply king moves away, and there's just no play. He's got to drop his queen back, but that's conceding defeat basically in the opening. Knight c4, streaming in that pawn on e3 is weak as well. Ugh. Knight b2 that's just a double attack. Knight c4 attacks b2, and it threatens bishop takes f4.
It does. And the quote unquote good news is I would play b3 here. And if you play bishop f4, I'd take with the e pawn and just say, hey, my pawn structure looks a little weird, but having a pawn f4 helps me play g5 and perhaps attack you on the king side. I like black's position. Knight c4 played very quickly by John. And how could he not be confident considering the match score?
Oh, he is. And we see Lawrence mouthing some stuff to himself. And I'm pretty sure he's neither uttering positive self-affirmations nor saying namaste. He is not happy. Queen b3 is a tilt move. Now it just castles in e5. This looks miserable. Why can't even castle because of knight t2? Queen b3 just doesn't look good.
And I don't understand queen b3. Just play b3. This doesn't even protect the pawn on e3, right? Bishop f4 is still possible. Knight h7.
John tried to perform surgery on those pawns with knight g5.
Yeah, I guess, but something feels off.
Exactly. I guess is a good way to react to that. It's not bad. Everything's good in a position like this, honestly.
I would think about a takes b5 here. Give up the f3.
Knight f3, knight d2.
You have this knight d2 stuff still. I don't know. I'm not totally convinced by that either.
Yeah, I agree.
You need some kind of imbalance if you're Lawrence, because black is just kind of pressing forward on both flanks. So AB5 just, even out of desperation, feels like a try here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this is objectively winning for black, but Lawrence spending too much time. He's just got to mix things up, as you say. He has got to mix things up. He can't just sit here and freeze.
And you can't take on g5 because queen takes g5 hits the e3 pawn a second. Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. It's queen g5, no? The piece is going backwards.
Every Russian.
Just castle. No, give up that pawn. You want to lose that pawn.
Simply give up the pawn to the five. Completely waiting for a blocker before my shot. But now I couldn't snap out of it. Now queen g3 and b3. I don't like b4. I think John he's trying to have his cake, and I mean, just sack that pawn, John. Sack b5. It's not even a sack. You take e3.
Yeah, this move b4 here, the queen e3 played. Now here comes b3, and then I still don't think white can castle easily. But then after b3, I go knight f2, pawn f4. I'm trying to push your pieces back, and then finally connect my rooks. So John being a little bit too perfectionist, I would say. Not giving up the b5 pawn, just trying to avoid the tactics. And we've said this in other matches, right? Sometimes these very solid players are fearful of some kind of tactical imbalance, and they play what they see as the calmest, most secure move. But when you're just playing secure chess, your opponent can actually still create play. And now he plays b3 and gives up the b pawn. So he could have done this by just castling right away.
Now f5 and fg. I would play f5 in a second, and against b3, f takes g4 in a second, because the power of black's pieces is such that, I mean, with 49 seconds on the clock, there's no way white's defending that, and that is exactly what he does. Kudos to John for correcting.
What's your move after b3?
Ooh, f takes g4, f4.
Exactly what I'm thinking.
And I would have lost. That's exactly what happens in most of my games.
You go for the sacrifice. See, that's the thing is, me. I love to sacrifice the player's pieces. They're not mine. But I saw f4 as a response to f6, g4. And I was like, wait a second, Danya. And I'm still thinking about knight f2 here. And just trying to play f4 as a response to any kind of f takes g4.
Yeah, I missed that. That's a very nice idea. But knight f2, maybe rook a b8.
Now you've just attacking me all over the place.
Now he just takes and lets the rook in. f4, queen g2 potentially. Queen can park itself on h2.
Actually, but I like that for more than what I've liked for white, because then you go rook g1, knight f2. White
bishop b4 check.
Oh my gosh, you're checking me from everywhere.
Indeed. And okay, still, white is in the game. I mean, this is not over yet, but something like queen h2, I just feel like the threats are coming from too many angles here. Rook c8, queen h5, everything.
Yeah, rook to b1 is not a move you ever want to play when your king's under attack. But king to d1, so far everything is protected. The queen on h2 would have been better, because then the knight on e2 would have been overloaded. Queen f3 pins that knight and says, hey, your knight now is really under attack. Knight a2 is the only move that I see here. You need to save your knight.
Yeah, rook g3. There's rook c3, among other things.
Rooks, yep.
Rook c3 ends it immediately. Queen c3, queen f1.
And then you win the knight on e2 with check. And then look at it. John is just so alert right now.
He is incredibly sharp. I mean, he started off a little bit sleepy, some, droopy eyelids, but he's had that coffee and he has been so sharp in time pressure. It's been just incredibly strong play with just a couple of inaccuracies, but no major mistakes.
And Lawrence playing on because rook g1, rook b to g1. Oh, the b3 pawn's hanging. The b3 pawn we're not hanging.
That was
try to trap the
slip.
queen. Yeah, what is
but he's not threatening anything.
And John down to 4 seconds. Here's rook g1, knight a5, rook
queen
f3 to e4. He got out. The queen gets out. F5. What a hilarious move. What a hilarious move.
Mate, F6 mate. John resigns.
Rook c1. Rook c1.
The threats against Black's king have become overwhelming.
And JB, man, this guy is
sharp
tough.
as nails.
I spoke too soon. After the first game, I was like, Lawrence just outplayed John technically. This could be a tough match for John, but Lawrence is a tough competitor here, but the match hasn't seemed that hard for JP. Somehow he hasn't even blinked. I'm wondering if he's okay.
Tranquil as a forest, but on fire within. Yeah, he is just locked in, loaded. This is not looking good for Lawrence at all.
Although this opening maybe is going Lawrence's way. The bishop on g7, you're happy about that.
Structure doesn't inspire confidence, I suppose.
Yeah, there's in general, when you don't have to worry so much about your pawn on d6, you feel much happier to play the Benoni. And the Benoni is a very strategically risky opening because of this backward pawn. But typically this pawn is on b2 rather than on c3.
Mm-hmm.
But the pawn on c3, it just feels like Black has some opportunities to put pressure on the queen side if you can time it right. But I guess John's just to clamp down and say, not so fast.
Yeah, something has gone wrong for John. That knight on e5. Well, John playing bishop h2, g5. All of these moves are very typical Benoni moves. f5, g5, expanding on the king side. That knight on e5 has been a thorn in John's throat before in that last game in the 5-minute segment. Here, Black has that knight as well as all of the other positional advantages. So John in big, big trouble here. But the fight is still ahead. White's position is still very tough not to crack, and so is John as a defender. Bishop e5 and knight c4 comes to mind. Threatening knight b6 and knight takes c5.
And that Lawrence just wants to play f4, and he didn't get it. He could have played f4 to a6. I actually didn't like a6. I feel like it was a bit slow. But now after this capture on your knight c4, threatening knight b6 and the bishop,
just take
Lawrence
it.
Reacts so quickly with rook e8.
But now the problem is knight e5 and c4. Black might be slightly better, but it's debilitating when the advantage transforms from something you were looking forward to relatively minor positional advantage. John decides to let that bishop go. Maybe bishop f6 now. Yeah, I feel like...
And now rook e4 is coming, and a sense of attack.
Yeah, a5 seems like things are slipping away here for John, because that knight on b6 is going to be stranded.
Exactly. Then I get stuck there. It looks like a great square. When you see a Sicilian, a Najdorf, hey, I get my knight to b6. That sounds so good in theory, but sometimes in practice, your knight gets there, can't get out of there. And Black is focusing all of his pieces on the king side. Watch out for queen g7, rook h4, pawn g4, just blasting through on the king side. I'm actually not sure how White deals with this.
Yeah, because queen e2 also meets with queen b5, picking off the knight. So even if you wanted to backtrack, you could. Maybe knight d2 is a sad necessity. The problem is it might be too late. Rook h4 and then g4. Knight is cut off from f3. This is looking very grim indeed for John.
And he plays knight b6, queen g7.
Maybe f4, I don't know.
Also, he could play queen b5, I guess, but I would not go queen b5. Just go queen g7. Just go to the king side. Like, why wouldn't you? Your king is very safe, despite the fact that you push pawns there. And rook h4, g4, all these moves feel quite natural and in some cases obvious.
Indeed. I would play f4 if I were John. Sometimes when you're basically lost, transforming the position, even if your moves aren't objectively good, is the way to go. But maybe John isn't as worried as... I don't know, should he be worried? Because rook h4 looks mighty, mighty unpleasant. Queen f3, g4, queen e2, g4. That h-file, once it's opened, spells immediate doom for White.
What's White's response? Maybe some kind of
g3.
Well, I'm waiting for you to take on h3, and then I was going to go to g3. He plays it right away.
And king g2 against rook h3. I like it.
Okay, so rook h3, king g2, and black has to be doing well, right? I mean, sometimes white is actually doing well despite losing a pawn. He takes with the pawn on.
I guess he wants an eventual h5, h4,
Or an
using that
F4
pawn as a
type of
battering ram, but that doesn't look quite as good.
Well, after king h2, can I go f4 here? And he plays rook g4, but I was thinking f4.
F4 here, rook g3, rook g1. Clever.
No. I was thinking f4 for black.
Oh!
Yeah, I'm not. No. Trust me, I'm not thinking of f4 for white. That's
yeah, I thought,
too
I can.
No, instead of
that.
instead of rook g4, I was thinking black playing f4 because the rook is immune to capture because queen g2 is mate, and after ef4, rook f4. I was just hoping that along the f file I could cause some problems.
John with king takes h3. I mean, he's got to be very careful. Now rook g3 is a huge threat, but maybe king g2 and
wait, king g2, rook takes, and then rook f6 the end.
Ooh,
right, king g2.
but queen g2 there.
Oh my gosh, you're surviving. You're trading queens off the board.
Maybe you give a check on h3 first, though, and then go
give
rook
a check
f6.
and then rook f6. Bring my rook into the game.
What now? Rook f6 anyway, and rook g6.
Rook f6 looks pretty good because
Looks
if I
like
can
a good
pile
start.
all my pressure on the g3 square, h5, h4. I mean, that also looks good.
Well, after h4, gh. Oh, but then even rook h4 and rook f6. Oh,
Exactly.
King
Starts
g2.
with rook f6.
John
King g2, h4. Play h4.
Yeah.
What you waiting for? There it is.
and hg, king f1. Somehow John's surviving, but not by much. And just gf and
yeah, gf.
You never know in this match.
Yeah, so much is
know.
happening here. Don't take on f5 because rook f6.
He's got to take and go queen h4 and try for some last-ditch counterplay.
I like that. Trying to get to d8 square. Oh, he doesn't.
Or
do
this.
Move the bishop out the way and get a queen b2 check.
Yep, I was thinking queen f5.
Uh-oh, here's queen c8 check. So rook,
but
rook
g2.
f6.
Or g2.
I was thinking rook
queen
f6
f8.
just to cover my squares. And what's the follow-up? It was queen c8 check.
h2.
Is it just that simple? Bishop h2, I can't do anything? I guess not.
Well, you could. No, you couldn't. I don't know what to do after bishop h2. You could resign.
I think you must resign because unfortunately queen c8 check. Oh, this queen here. Wait, can I just take and go king f3?
You could. Was that even
rook g3 now? Look at that.
C8. Oh, rook queen f3.
Queen f3. I was waiting for that.
King d3, and he resigns. Okay, I would have played a couple more moves, but okay.
That game hurt my head. Honestly, my brain hurts. It really does. And
that took a lot of time off the clock, though.
It did, but finally Lawrence has a win to his name, and he hasn't won a game since the first game of the match, right? Just a couple of draws.
Mm-hmm.
So his second win of the match, he's going to feel a little bit better, but still he is down 5 points. And John didn't change at all. Like his facial expressions do not change.
Yeah, they literally win, loss. You have no idea. Is he down by 30 points? Is he up by 60 points? John is just made of steel.
I actually don't even think we call it facial expressions. We should just singular. Facial expressions.
The John. It's the John. The JP. Just the focused John, the casual John. It's whatever it is. It's the John.
Do you mind? What does John usually say? What are some of his lines?
Hey guys, this is John. I'm gonna play some Teams Canada today. Oh man. Not my game. This game's flagged on move 10. It's okay. We're gonna take the next game. Let's play a Scandi here. I think we're gonna play a solid Slav here. Solid Slav here, guys. I'm gonna just take a drink of my espresso, guys. All right, guys. Now armed with my Starbucks espresso. Let's play a nice solid Slav here, guys. All right, thank you, guys.
Love it.
All right.
I love it. Your John is fantastic. And in general, I mean, this guy, look at him. He's got a finger on his chin right now. That is the pensive John look I've never seen before.
Yeah, I haven't been able to do Lawrence, though. I practiced it right before the match for like 30 minutes, but I wasn't able to capture any of the... I mean, he, in a certain way, speaks slowly, but I can't seem to understand exactly what makes him tick, you know? It's more that I can't really do it now.
No,
I can't do Lawrence.
You can't. I appreciate the effort, but Lawrence, accent is kind of unique. He's half British, half American, actually. And so maybe, you're going full British on us, and Lawrence doesn't quite have that full Brit. I don't know. I'm just grasping at straws here. And
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to, we have over 10,000 people across all platforms, and whether you're watching on Chess TV, YouTube, Twitch, you name it, we appreciate you. It's been so much fun for us. Not so fun for Lawrence Trent right now, as he is down quite a lot in this match, but he still has chances. And Danya, the question that I want to have answered, you were joking about it when you were doing a John impression. When are we going to get a Scandinavian? Is he going to treat us in the bullet?
Well, in order to get a Scandinavian, Lawrence will have to play e4. So that hinges on that. And I'm not sure Lawrence has any plans of playing e4.
True Team Scandi players make Scandinavians happen. Okay.
Well, John did play d5. I mean,
no
do you want him to
excuses.
play? Maybe he should play e5 against d4. By the way, tons of tactics now by Lawrence. Bishop takes h6 and queen g6. This is looking very dicey for John. Maybe king h8, but maybe John will play d4 e5 and queen bishop h6.
But there's knight h7 at the end. So John is just saying, I'm going to be cool in the face of pressure. Queen g6, king h8. Oh, with bishop f7 is a possibility. Queen h6, knight h7.
So close. What about queen g6 here?
Knight h7.
Rook d6. No. Bishop d6, bishop h6, bishop e5.
No, bishop h2 check.
Oh.
I was hoping you would do something like that.
Those pins. Why do they exist?
You're usually the one finding awesome tactics. Occasionally, I need my time to shine as well.
That was a nice move. Nice flourish. Queen g6 played.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Don't follow my advice, Lawrence. You should have learned that in the first match. Knight d5.
Wow. That
Maybe even more precise. I don't know.
That hits the bishop. That actually is just a great move.
It is. I think Lawrence got too excited. He should have kept the pressure going. Rook e1 maybe there. Yeah.
Yeah, some kind of knight h4 to f5 or rook e1, as you were saying, looked better than this, because after knight takes over queen f4, the f7 pawn still is a weakness, but knight f6 here for black, then knight e5. So actually, I don't want to speak too soon. There's a lot of pressure on that f7 pawn.
He is definitely some pressure on the f7 pawn, yes. But I still think that he's let John off the hook. Queen f6, by the way, queen c7.
Yes.
Still poking and prodding, although there may be knight b6 attacking the bishop. I mean, just this looks like it's spiraling out of control for Lawrence, to be honest, especially given the dominating initiative he had a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and John is playing extremely well. That knight d5 move was really high class, and he found it relatively quickly. And now, though, he's down 20 plus seconds on the clock. He took that pawn.
I just got to give a shout out to John's tactics in this match. I mean, he has been so incredibly alert, basically after game one. But queen b2, is he going overboard after rook a to b1? What is his idea? Queen f6?
He's going to go queen f6 and just trade queens, if he can.
I've never seen John trade queens before, but I'll take your word for it.
I'm looking at queen e4, just hitting the bishop on e7, giving my next move to be rook to b1, and he plays rook b1 first, but queen f6 here. I don't know what White's response is going to be. If you take on f6, then knight takes f6.
Well, how bad is that? Rook d8 and rook b7? Doesn't White have a lot of pressure there with knight e5?
Yeah, the f7 pawn is the weak square. Really the weak square.
Now, the issue is Black could even give that up somehow, but I'm not sure who's the one fighting for equality. It might very well be Black.
Actually, this does look really good for White because f7 is hard to protect. Rook d7. He throws in the check first, and bishop d6. Why do you play rook d7?
Yeah, rook d7. Now
there's bishop f7 check, I guess, but
still king f7, king e6. That's c-pawn, far advanced. Ooh, rook d7.
Rook d7, knight b6.
Knight b6. My goodness. John. Oh, but knight b6, there's rook d8 and bishop b3, and bishop takes g3.
Yes, you don't want to put the rooks up. This is happening, knight b6. Here's knight b6.
Rook d8, bishop b3. Oh, he takes on f7. I'm not sure that...
Okay, he's just stealing all the pawns. But the c-pawn is running.
Pawn. Knight h4.
Oh, shoot. Is that a checkmate?
It might be.
Can you stop bishop e7? Bishop e7. Oh, he had bishop e7. He needed to play bishop e7.
This is hanging by a thread. Knight f5. Now the bishop's going to... What is going on here?
This is ridiculous.
Rook d2, rook f7, king e8. There's no mate yet.
There's no mate, but... Oh, gosh, it's so close. King g2, what is that? Yeah, that didn't look good. That did
not look good at all. That was
96 check. He won the bishop. He won the bishop.
But C2. I would have gone C2 there. Robert, what would...
And now rook C3. Oh, he had rook C3.
Oh, my goodness. He did, because the knight defended the bishop. Now it's a game again.
And, well, it's Lawrence's game right now. Knight G8 check, winning the H6 pawn.
It is.
And what a free knight. You always say that John loves putting a piece in the D5 square.
He does.
He loves it a little too much. Because
you know what John's saying right now? Nothing.
Well, guys, that was a tough game for me, and I don't know what he's saying. You do it better than I do. I can't.
Man, he might, depending on how frustrated he is. The addition of the words "man." If he's a little frustrated, he'll say, "Ah, man." If he's raging, throwing stuff right. Man. Not my way. Didn't go my way. Lawrence though.
F6. Oh my God! Wait! F6. G4 trapped the knight. That was
my God! Yeah.
That was a mouse slip for the ages. He meant to go F5 in true Benoni fashion.
Still, bishop H5 is miserable.
Well,
and knight C4.
This is kind of Bobby Fischer-like, right? You give up the H pawn, and you get. Look at this. There's actually some counterplay here.
There is.
F6 was. I mean, seriously, that is one of the worst mouse slips you could possibly imagine.
Did John pre-move bishop E2?
I don't think so. He spent 1.7 seconds, so that's a strange pre-move. But G4 traps the pony on H5. So we get to the live position here, castle's queenside, and I don't know. I'm looking at some kind of knight A6, knight B4, bishop F5, trying to make an attack happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is very knight A6, knight B4, bishop F5 looks very good indeed. These positions with the absence of a light squared bishop, Robert. Sometimes they arise in the King's Indian. That's happened a couple times in my games. I've always enjoyed playing against the B5. I'm not sure about. I feel like he should have started by developing that knight. But this also looks quite formidable, of course.
He's just trying to kick the knight from C3 and go for an attack. But the problem is the D6 pawn is so weak. He plays bishop F5 now. Knight takes B5. There's some kind of queen B7 at the right moment.
Maybe
going for a checkmate.
Maybe queen G5 for John.
Yeah, queen G5 and kind of queen C7-ish.
Queen G3.
I say ish just because I don't really know what's going on and it felt like the thing to say. I'm trying to get my queen over to A5 and deliver checkmate, and you're trying to win on my pawn. So you're just a mean guy.
I know.
Wait, but if queen C7, queen G3, I have rook F6 and maybe rook G6.
Yeah, though I was worried there about queen G3, rook F6, and then I go
94,
rook G6. Bishop D6 even maybe just crashing through because
queen
eventually
A5.
you're going to run out of material.
Yeah, but I don't need my material. All I need is my queen to go run over to the king, to your king, and deliver checkmate. This is not what John wants, right? When your opponent plays F6, and of course, even ignoring trapping that piece on H5, it's like you got a free tempo in the opening. And now knight E4, I'm looking at queen A5, trying to just take on A2.
But concretely, queen A5, bishop takes D6. I'm not seeing it because queen A2 met with bishop B5. I realize it's very flimsy, John, not his type of position, but sometimes you have to go for a position like this in order to win the game.
Right. So knight D7 played here, but now
so he's covering the E5 square.
So it's an exchange sacrifice, really out of necessity, but I like it because now the queen comes to A5 and A2 is hard to defend because he played A3, you welcome B4, chiseling open the queen side. If you put your king on B1, well, now you can't because there's a bishop there. But you have no good discovery, do you?
It depends. I mean, what? Whoa, Robert, knight F5?
Knight F5, rook F5.
Queen F5.
Yeah, it's wishful thinking.
Way, queen B1 is coming in. I think Lawrence with a grimace. John's just got to find one move, queen B1, and that shuts literally the whole operation down.
Queen B1, yeah. I mean, you play F6 on move, whatever it was, and, it's a mouse slip. It's unfortunate because Lawrence had the momentum. He'd won 2 straight games, right? And now you're left in this position. And John still has a little bit of work to figure this one out because C4, knight C5, if I get those moves in, I have knight D3 check, I have knight B3 check. So your king is not perfectly safe. And he plays knight B6, please take me on C5, I go rook C8.
Yeah, John's totally going to do that. Maybe D6 even, because knight C4, though, I like the way Lawrence is fighting this out. Bishop C3, queen C4 comes
queen
now
C2.
Queen D3, though, or whatever.
Queen
A2, anything wins. All roads lead to Rome here, or to Minneapolis.
So if queen B4, you can even go D6 check with a knight C4. And there's still some pressure here against this
Okay,
king.
a little bit maybe, but 6 and 2-7. Yeah, queen a3.
Wait. Take on a3, take on c3. You're going to win.
Oh,
Wait.
that was a big chance. Look at those pawns there. That was not that clear.
Take bishop
What are they-
c3.
Do not tell me John is going to repeat moves here.
That would be quite hilarious. He goes there, but not knight c4.
D7 though.
Oh, I need
Bishop
to take on
c3, queen, and then queen a7, and all of a sudden the fortune's turn.
Right.
Maybe d7, rook d8 actually staves off the immediate threat of promotion.
And look at the time. Whoa, what is that move? Bishop takes c3, b3, knight a3. Oh, king go knight a3 check. My knight's pinned. Haha.
Oh my goodness. I missed that too, actually. I was going to suggest king d3.
I mean, what are we going? Ernesto Inarquia versus Magnus Carlsen?
Yeah, good reference.
And there's just so little that can be done for black.
King h8 prophylaxis, alpha 0.
It's just more like 0 than...
Yeah, the 0 on the score sheet.
Is there anything here? King h8 is probably the move you kind of have to play. Maybe king f8, but king f8 just d7 anyway. This is a sad position. a5. So queen b3 trades queens, right? Oh, okay, d7. But queen b3 just ends it. You cannot stop the queen
trade. Rook up. John, there we go. There we have it. That's such a debilitating move to face. For me personally, that's one of the most annoying things when your opponent just trades queens of material and you know the game is basically over. But Lauren's fighting tooth and nail here. King b1, though, there's just too little to work
He
with.
wants some kind of rook a1 checkmate. It's not going to happen. D8 equals queen.
D8
You can
queen.
sacrifice. Bishop c7, even more precise probably. Wait a second.
Are you sure it's more precise? Well, it's still winning just because of the abundance of material, but a3, cutting it close is John.
Right, because of a3, knight a3, rook a3, I'm threatening rook a1 checkmate, but you get a queen on d8. So bishop d8 played.
Now takes rook
Lawrence.
d4.
Yeah, just any knight move, knight 7 to c6, wins the rook because my rook protects d7.
Yep. And the pawns are not enough of a force. That is a very big win by John, quite possibly taking us to the last game of the 3-minute section. A 5-point lead going into bullet is all but insurmountable. Had Lawrence won that game, it would have been a 3-point game. You think about it, that's a humongous swing.
It is. And we'll have to ask Lawrence in the post-match interview if the match continues to go this way.
Sorry, there's that copy. He started by, slowly putting it to the corner of his mouth. Now he's just full on into the center of his mouth, just dumping that into his...
That's how you know he's excited.
Exactly.
By how he drinks his coffee. But what I was going to say, Danya, is we'll have to ask Lawrence if the match continues to go this way and John pulls it out, if he feels like, of course, it was already likely, probabilistically speaking, that John was going to win the match, but you won 2 games in a row, all momentum's on your side, and then you mouse up at f6, that just takes just takes it all out of you. There's it feels really just deflating, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like Lawrence might start, I don't know, quoting Charles Dickens in return is his response.
I really hope he doesn't do that, but Dickens' books are really long, and so don't remind me of reading those books. Anyway, on to happier times, happier moments.
I did enjoy that. There's another vigorous sip of the coffee, and queen takes b6 by Lawrence. But those pawns, Robert, they've occurred several times throughout the matches where on the one hand they are doubled, on the other hand the a file is open. That pawn mass is actually very, very solid. It can be a strength as well as a weakness.
Yeah, and the pawns on the queen side, I think, typically are a strength in this type of position because you can play b5 and you have this solid chain from b7, c6, b5. And typically when you see a move like b5, you look at the c6 pawn and have to worry about it, but not in a position like this where there is another pawn on b7, the rook on a8, an active one on the semi-open file, the rook on a1, a defensive piece protecting this pawn on a2. And the bishop on h5, that can become a problem for black. So f6 should be a consideration, maybe an e5 push and bring the bishop to f7.
Absolutely, very solid. That a file, Lawrence could come to regret it. I mean, John, obviously taking his time here. Let's see how long remains, 3 minutes, 50 seconds. He definitely wants to bleed the clock here. A draw absolutely satisfies him, but if he ends this on a win, basically he can just relax. Now bishop f6 and castles. There's this idea of meeting e5 with bishop takes e5. How does white defend the pawn?
I was thinking bishop b4 instead of bishop f6, but this is also good. Castles.
Oh.
And the pawn on
rook
d4 is
d8.
gone.
Yeah.
E5 bishop. Nice. Look at you. Nice tactical fun. This is exactly
this
what's
is
going to
collapsing
happen.
also because you can't even take because of rook c2 forks the bishops. This is completely lost.
Losing 2 pawns in a row. The dominoes fall, and Lawrence. Oh, look at his face. He's so pained.
Yes, he is, and he is saying a lot of things. And John, there we go again, tilting the angle of the coffee cup, now rising with each sip. I don't know if there's anything in there. I mean, I've taken as many sips of coffee as John has. I filled it to the brim. I don't have any coffee left. I think that's just an empty cup. He's drinking out of habit.
It's so awesome. He's got like a nervous habit. He's got a tick where he's just I gotta bring that coffee up.
Rook e4. Oh, much mopping everything up. That's what I'm gonna do to the dust in my apartment after this match is over. Just mop everything up. Rook e4, bishop e2.
I don't know if I would do that though, because the f7 pawn falls at the end of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's one of those things that just maybe looks better than it actually is. He is looking at that a4 pawn. Do I want to take that? Should I just go rook h to d8? Should I play f5? I mean, you have so many good moves here. I feel like rook takes e4 is just that one chance that Lawrence needs to try to come back in this game.
Yeah, that was impulsive. You're absolutely right. Knight a4. John, that's one of his strengths, and we've played a ton of blitz games. He catches me a lot on that. I'll make an impulsive move thinking the game is over. Very, very tricky. And he doesn't do that. He's always clinical, and here we see knight a4 up 3 pawns, and some tiny slivers of counterplay, but virtually nothing because of that incredibly solid pawn chain, b7, c6. You can drop the knight back to b6. It's not looking good for Lawrence.
Yeah, Lawrence, I mean, bishop to b5 is, maybe there's a kind of like rook a7. He's at this point just praying for something, but it looks like a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah.
Knight b6. Maybe there's some kind of knight c5 though, and then rook a7. It's perhaps not quite as simple as we made it out to be.
Yeah, but rook d8 though, meeting rook a7 with rook t1, and like you said, Robert, just like Lawrence Trent's pre-match speech is a whole lot of nothing.
And
let's make sure he doesn't hear that.
What a John move, rook a8, offering a rook exchange. Now knight takes b7, followed by bishop takes c6 is a big threat.
Yeah.
You cannot take this bishop on b5 because once you take it, look at your king, look at the rook on c1. So bishop g6 thrown in, rook to b2 quickly. And now there's just
24 seconds.
Knight, you can't move your knight because then b7 really is falling. Oh my gosh, there's that rook d8 move. Look at that, rook a8, bishop g6, and then rook to d8.
So fundamentally sound. Every piece is on a healthy, good square. It's just so infuriating to play John.
I mean, it's fun to watch him though, because as long as I'm not on the receiving end of his really nice, precise moves, it's just fun to see such a technically sound player. And knight a6 check, just going for tricks, doesn't work. Any kind of knight takes b7 doesn't work. So it's rook d1 check as an intermezzo. So
no, this is just over. Rook d1 is just such a buzzkill because that bishop's going to be hanging. Let's not forget black is 3 whole pawns up. So there's just nothing here for Lawrence. And time is up. This is going to be the last game.
I was going to say Lawrence should have resigned and try to get one more 3-minute game in, because now it's about to be a 6-point lead, and a 5-point lead would still be tough, but a 6-point lead, I mean, I don't even know if you have enough games to play to come back. 25
minutes on the clock. John is an incredibly strong bullet player. Just not good for Lawrence. Rook a8 again.
It's
John
so annoying.
Insistent rook a1 just streaming in. No, bishop g6, drop everything back.
That rook a8 move is so annoying because if you take it on a8, the knight goes to a8. You're like, oh, nobody likes a knight on a8, but it's just up material. And yeah, look at him. He's gonna push his pawns now, and
he's gonna take another sip of his mythical, non-existent coffee. I guarantee it. Oh,
96! 96! Oh my God! We were just complimenting him, and he just blundered a full rook. And Lawrence Trent, if he wins,
man, that's 5 shakes for 5 mans.
Oh my gosh!
Oh man, this is big. This is big, ladies and gentlemen.
I just really lost bishop g2. You win.
I cannot believe that.
I really just freaked out there. And he just blundered a full rook.
And he's holding on, actually. Lawrence got some work to do, but this is, of course, he's going to win this.
Oh my, that hurt.
That does. I mean, the only thing you could have blundered, and kudos to Lawrence for staying in the game, but John, that must hurt.
And kudos to John, by the way, because he could have just resigned. Wait a second.
And c4.
Yeah, this is getting scary, honestly.
I would have taken actually and gone c4. Those
B6?
positions can be very hard to win.
Wait, why didn't he bring his king around to a5? But he's just trying to stay in the center. Look at these three pawns here.
This is not over yet, Josh.
No, bishop e8. Bishop e8 is a
Far
good
from
move.
over. Bishop d3, d3, king d4. Holy cannoli.
Go bishop e8 and start
Bishop
taking
d5,
the pawns.
c4 also.
But then I'm gonna take g6, take f5.
But bishop e4.
Okay, bishop f7 and take on c4.
c3.
Oh, he let the pawns go.
c3, king e3.
Oh my gosh,
John
King
Maid's
E3.
made it.
King
He's
e3.
mates.
He was mating him. King e3.
d2. No,
D2?
no, not this way. Now he can give up to the rook for the bishop.
Oh my gosh, the h pawn goes.
But is this winning? King e6. How does
And
white win? No. What is he doing? He's not going to make it.
H7.
Where is he?
C2. Play C2. No, it doesn't work.
It doesn't quite do the trick. That queen on
He's easy to get
h8.
a
John.
King d3 coming. Bishop takes b3. So he
Lawrence just got to see one move.
and he gets it off. And now somehow, some way, Lawrence Trent stays in this match.
By hook or by crook, he makes it happen in a 4-point game. Still a humongous lead for John, but at least this adds to some intrigue. And we need to let both of these players catch a well-deserved breath.
We're going to go back and instant replay that moment here. King to d8. He was worried about knight b5 check with the fork, and he walks into a different fork altogether after king d8, knight c6 check. Not something you see happen in John Bartholomew practically ever. We cursed the guy. I'm so sorry, John, but credit to Lawrence Trent. He looked like he wanted to resign. He willed himself to keep playing. He ends up winning the rook and winning the game. We will be right back in a few minutes with the bullet portion of this I Am Not GM Speeches Championship match brought to you by Chess.com. Well, the I Am Not a GM Speed Chess Championship is not the only event brought to you by Chess.com. There are so many happening now and in the near future. There is the premium arenas, which I know my good friend here, Daniel Naroditsky, he's going to stop commentating and start playing, because for premium members only, you get 2 hours of 3-0 Blitz. You get to play the likes of Hikaru Nakamura, your Daniel Naroditskys, and maybe even your Robert Hesses if I just dust off the pieces and go play. So, Daniel, that's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. And please do dust off the pieces because you're not too shabby yourself. But that's not the only event that we have upcoming. That's one of several fascinating tournaments that you are going to want to be a part of. And of course, prizes are also very, very generous. But there's also the Online Nations Cup from May 5th through 10th, another very, very interesting tournament.
That's going to be a fabulous one. You have teams from the USA, India, China, Russia, a European team, and a rest of the world team. Ali Reza Firouzja, Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana. You have Vida Gujrathi playing along with Vishwanathan Anand, Dingli Ren, Wang Hao. I mean, you name these top players from the countries, they're going to be there. So that will be brought to you exclusively on Chess.com. So that will be a great event with all of the top players in the world. And of course, there is another event for Europeans only. Danya, sad day for us. We can't play every single event we want to play, but it's going to be a great one. The European Online Chess Championship coming May 16th. So much chess ahead.
Indeed, put that in your calendar, May 16th. But we have more fascinating chess ahead in the form of a 25-minute bullet section where Lawrence Trent has to mount an absolutely historic comeback. But that's been done before. You know how fired up he is. Robert, you usually ask me these questions. Let me turn the tables to you. How do you rank Lawrence's chances? Do you think it's realistic to believe that he's actually going to make this a close match?
Well, Lawrence does know how to bring mayhem to the board. So if he can create that chaos, and I'm a little concerned about John because I know we joke that he's always stoic and he has the same exact facial expression, but losing a game like that when you could have practically iced the match and then you lose it one bullet game and then maybe a second one, that really hurts your confidence. And right now, Lawrence playing this modern defense, very slow approach. Bishop c4 by JB, and look at this, triangle, b2 to d4 to f2. Very solid play by John thus far.
Indeed, unbreakable. And John with a proven bullet pedigree. Bishop a6 here, by the way, pretty decent. He's fast when he needs to be. John likes to take his time, but he, 2596, he's definitely underrated. I've seen him be over 2700. Lawrence 25-25 sounds about right. Again, I'm not familiar with whether he's a very good bullet player, mediocre bullet player. I guess everything will be revealed. This is a crucial first game, Robert, because if John wins this, I don't want to say that ends it, but basically this is a must win for Lawrence.
Yes, and Lawrence is very good at dodging bullets when people are attacking him on the chessboard. And Bullet is one of my favorite characters in the show, The Killing, but that's neither here nor there. And right now you see that Lawrence is trying to get his queen on the out of the corner, plays h6 to get the knight away. And look at this setup. Black is super solid. The pawn's on e7 and d6. The bishop on h2 is blunted. And that's really key because sometimes in these London type of structures, the bishop gets loose and all of a sudden Black's position becomes problematic. But now that queen is on c7, queen b8, offering the queen trade, do you take it, Danya, or do you leave it?
John leaves it. That queen on c6. This is, if there is a single position that most epitomizes John, it's this one. He's got that pressure, knight c4, no weaknesses, super solid. Knight drives into a5. This is not what Lawrence was looking for from the first game. Now, with that being said, a draw is better than a loss. If he can hold this together quickly, much, much better than loss. But now bishop c7 is in the mix. This is looking very, very suspicious for Black.
What did I say about that London bishop? When it comes to life, it comes in full force in bishop c7, just trying to kick that queen away. And Danya, I want to point out that the key word in what you were saying is quickly, because John can milk so much time off the match clock right here. And even if he doesn't convert this position, it does look good for him, maybe even winning just because the pawn a6 is the biggest target, that just wasting another minute and a half of the match clock is really bad for Lawrence.
Yeah, with the lead that he has, he's going hunting for that pawn. Knight b1 becomes an idea, knight c5. But now how does he avoid, look at that passer.
You're losing it. You're losing
c6, but c6 is just coming in. Bishop e5 against knight f6. This could just be promotion.
Bishop e5 is beautiful.
Knight c4, not over yet.
Move. Knight b6, but then just take on a6.
And look at that knight on f6, g5, king g6. Good job by look. Knight c5, and then bishop f6, knight d7 check.
That's really nice. King g6, bishop takes f6, knight d7. So you can't do anything. b4
And
maybe?
it's a threat. Knight d7.
Yep. Look at that find. We talked about how JB has been alert all day. He's finding that tactic, and now he's just up a piece. And I think with that, the match is not quite iced, but it's getting there. It's really
getting
close.
there. And he took a chunk. Lawrence has got to resign this. He took a chunk of time off the clock, basically 4 minutes, and he's won the game. Here we see resignation, but 5-point lead. I mean, this is going to be a miracle if he makes this happen. And here we see the Bird's defense.
Oh, it's not a defense. It's the opening. Come on.
Bird's opening, the Trent variation, the reverse touch. And
yeah, this
Lawrence,
is just, he's clearly just upset and going for it. But it's not a bad weapon in Bullet because your plan is to go g4, queen h4, go for an attack on the king side. And in Bullet chess, king safety is so essential that if you can scare your opponent, it's often more valuable than actually playing the slow approach and strategically improving. F5.
Totally. It's the most important factor.
Oh, knight g5 or h6? Wait a second.
Oh, h6. Where does the knight go? John driving the rook into e2. He's banking on that knight on d7, guarding the knight on f6. Knight on f6. Defends the pawn on h7.
D4.
Oh, man, that's painful because g2 becomes weak. Is this just lost for white?
It looks losing because you don't have
d5. No, rook g2.
Ooh,
Rook g2, rook g2.
But that's the only kind of thing to dislodge the knight from f6 to get queen h7 checkmate.
Also, bishop d5 and queen h2.
Oh, man.
Everything.
If the bishop moves, there's queen h2 coming. You're right. FG. And if there's hg.
Yep, doesn't have to hurry. He can do this too. This is crushing. I mean, black's attack so much weightier than white's. White's attack not doesn't even exist because GF can king h8 and king is perfectly queen h2 checkmate. Yep, and John sees it instantly.
Yeah, John's a beast.
This is a runaway train. I mean, with a 6-point lead, 20 minutes to go, this is all but over.
And John's bullet rating back over 2,600. And I mean, he's just really playing well. And Lawrence is drops below 2,500, but it's just a testament to John's strength. We have a sort of a French with a knight on c6. What's that knight doing there?
That's like a weird McCutcheon, but knight e4. Actually, I like the way Lawrence has made this. I don't like bishop c3, though. This is a great position for white because that knight on c6 blocking the pawn on c7, which normally belongs on c5 in the French. Otherwise, white's pawn chain in the center, forced to be reckoned with. Rook h3, John c4, displaying pretty good knowledge of these ideas, even though he's not an e4 player.
No, but he knows how to use squares like d5 because he's a Team Scandy guy. But now this d4 pawn, that's a weakness. Bishop f3, threatening the d4 pawn.
Maybe c4 was rash.
And bishop d5. Look at that by Lawrence, taking over these squares. The c4 square is now black's. Queen d7 hitting the pawn. Just go c6.
There was no threat. I would have just castled because queen a4, there was bishop b5 check.
That's true.
But this is fine for white as well. I mean, this is going to take an eon for black to win if he ends up winning. I would take on a4 and a6 and just go d5.
Oh, d5.
And e6. d5, e6, knight e5.
Yeah, d5 was
nice.
Nasty. And he just plays like this. He's playing the John style that we all know and love. Very solid. Doesn't want to commit to anything. Doesn't want to get too tactical in case it backfires. Look at him, h5. Now he can just c4. He wants to get his queen to e4, not happening in time to bishop c2. Just attacking this knight.
Yeah, just
get out of there. Queen f5.
Now he wants queen f5. Now that's John's version of a pawn sacrifice, carving out the diagonal.
I love it. That's a pawn sacrifice. It's just a great move. A knight c5 is a very nice response.
It is very resourceful. Maybe knight d4. I mean, at this point, wow. And look at that tactical awareness. Bishop h7 check.
Yep. There's always this.
John on top the whole match, but I'm not sure this could backfire. The pawn on d6 could be a big weakness in the end game.
And good vision by Lawrence to play queen f6 because all of the queen moves did not look very good. This looks much more promising. The pawn on d6, rook d7, rook to d8, and that pawn may be lost. And he takes on f3 first. Now there's knight b7 back to c5 because the d6 pawn cannot be protected. If it goes to d7, it's going knight back to c5. So he chooses this way. He's going to take the slower approach, piling up pressure on the d6 pawn. But here comes rook b1.
This is going to be hard to crack. Once again, that pawn on b6, black needs to attend to that pawn constantly, which means basically one of his rooks is going to be tied down. I don't know. I mean, this is not going to be easy to win. He's trying to retool his rooks, but again, that pawn on b6, permanent weakness, basically.
And just a little bit of shuffling here. Perhaps that king can go G7, F8, E8, D7, but that's a long journey. That king will take a long walk there. And now E5 at some moment from black, just trying to break open the position.
I like what John's doing, though, transferring the bishop through F3 to C6.
Ooh, that's not going to be fun, because now once I take on D7, B6 falls.
Maybe E5, but that does not look like a step in the right direction.
I think you have to do something like that, though.
Yeah, otherwise...
he hung the rook.
Definitely.
He hung the rook.
He just hung the rook.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my gosh. Lawrence, a look to the side, a sigh of resignation.
And quite a literal resignation.
Yeah, literally a sigh of resignation. A sigh followed by a resignation.
Oh man, when matches get out of hand, it becomes very painful. Like, even though we feel bad for the losing player, no matter who it is, just something is a little bit different when it's a close match. It could have gone either way. You're like, wow, that was crazy. We're excited. It's an electric atmosphere. But when it's so one-sided as the score now is, it just starts feeling. I just feel sad. Whoa, what's going on in this? What is happening?
What?
EA,
GH. There is a line of the Slav similar to this where I've seen this happen, but a kind of a buzzkill by John. I would have just take on A1 and get 3-4 queens on the board. Come on.
This is the one time I'm calling for the analysis board, because we need to see that position. I think that the fans deserved it, and we should give John some grief about it, because
even though he's winning,
because if we just go back in time, we're going to go on the analysis board here, that in this line, you can take on A1, you take on H8, and how often do you get treated to a position with 4 queens just like this? You don't get this very often, so it's a little bit upsetting that John didn't go for it. It's probably bad for black, which is why he didn't go for it, but I just want to stare at the position a little more.
Me too. By the way, John is about to win. Queen takes, John with a savage tactic wins the game, but still, nice. I mean, he should have done this for the fans. Bad John. John. I think we shouldn't invite him back solely on that basis.
Queen takes E1. What a way to finish that game.
Oh, look at what's happening right here. He's just mowing down one rook after the other, paving the way for that pawn.
So you know what he did there? He didn't want 4 queens. He wanted to sacrifice his queen so he could get a new one. I still feel like we lost an opportunity there.
Absolutely. Did he just take a sip of coffee? Because I missed him. Did John actually take another sip of coffee? Because there is nothing but emptiness in that cup.
Hey, maybe he has like 5 of the same exact cups. Have you thought about that? You didn't think about that, did you?
5 of the same exact cups.
See, you got to think outside the box.
Really? Well, John, you think John did that much thinking and preparation? He didn't even prepare for Lawrence. He thought about what I would think about his coffee drinking habits and the fact that I would notice them. So let's prepare the same type of mug. Definitely. Very plausible, Robert.
Or it wasn't prepared. He just happens to be sponsored by whatever. Is that a Starbucks mug? I don't know what it is, but I don't drink coffee. But he's sponsored by it, so he just has a collection of them. And so he just goes from one to the other. He pours all his coffee in advance. That way he doesn't have to leave his seat.
Well, the thing that's revealing, though, is when you're drinking coffee, you take a sip, right? You tilt it slowly. You don't bring it up to your mouth and then tilt it all in one motion as he's doing. He's doing this. That means the coffee is going to spill out if there's actually any coffee left. So I have caught him red-handed. I think we should uninvite him from.
Hey, man, I think you're just mean mugging. And wait, what's going on? Is there a piece lost here?
You just blundered a piece, yeah. You see what I did to him?
Yeah, you called out
poor John.
Is this the clearest position? Yeah, I mean, if you could somehow get the D7 pawn and then collapse the whole pawn structure, maybe you have a chance, but you don't.
If you ever need a coffee private investigator, any of your friends, you think they're fooling you into thinking that they're drinking coffee when they're not, you know who to turn to.
Can we just talk about this pawn chain from D7 to H3?
Let's talk about the pawn chain.
Oh, it's gone. Okay, never mind. Hey, rook takes D7. This is a problem
John
now.
Somehow staying in the game, by the way.
Which is actually, it just hurts to see this because for Lawrence, he finally gets a winning position. And even that winning position. Oh, gosh.
What?
Some checks? Did rook E1 check, rook D1 check?
Oh, but king C3 and king C3, nothing going his way. He walked right into that. And rook C2, literally nothing going his way. Rook D2, rook C2.
And rook G2 there, and then you just try to bring your king in.
I would go rook E2, but then king G7. The king is in time.
Yes, the king is going to be in time, and the rook wants to stay attached to this pawn H2. And E6. Can I just go after the F5 pawn?
I would just draw this because I would be a little bit concerned about losing H2.
Whoa. Okay,
E6
rook
here.
C2,
He
rook
wants.
C2.
Okay, whatever. Yeah. This
Hey, king C4 there.
King C4 is just winning. Yeah.
There's the rook G2 that I was calling for. You can never take on G2.
You can go rook E2 and King E3.
But then I'll go rook G1. So I've like made you really commit to something.
Oh, King E3.
Oh,
check.
King E3.
Filthy.
Oh my gosh.
What
She
a
walked
trick
right into it.
Lawrence, man. Oh, man. Man. Lawrence is definitely not saying man. He's saying something. But
Yeah, expletive.
those words are not man.
Oh, and IM Rosen. Shout out to Eric Rose in the chat. He was a great presence in this IM GM Speed Chess Championship. He lost to Alina Kapshinskaya.
John with a smile, by the way.
Yeah, we do have a smile. It was forced out of him. He smiles. But I just want to give Eric that shout
fist
out.
bump. I think he's watching us smiling, and so he's smiling.
He's doing it for the fans. Fans.
What is Lauren? What in the world? Queen B5, the Rai Lopez queen variation.
I don't get it. But B7, F5, both hanging. I guess if you take on B7, you're going to have a world of problems there. Rook B8 followed by knight to B4.
No, who cares? Just barrel in, and knight B4 resigns. Queen C4.
Ooh, one last trick.
Still, this is lost for white.
Are you telling me that you can't move the same piece over and over again and get away with it?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't know where you learned that principle from, but somehow Lawrence is through some incredible gymnastics with his queen. He's staying in the game.
I would sack the
He's
queen
up
on
a pawn.
B5.
He's probably better now. If I wanted to fool around, I'd go queen D4 here with black. And that's what he does.
Hey, you understand John Bartholomew.
I do. I've told you. I wasn't lying when I said we've been friends many, many years. I think I know how that twisted brain
Wait,
of works.
Queen C3, Knight C2, and there's Knight C3. Wow, what a...
Lawrence.
Look at that.
Pulling out all the stops here.
And King D1.
And if he loses this one...
Don't even suggest
this
that
is the
possibility.
consolation goal. This is his chance at a serious consolation goal. C3, King C2, slowly expand. He's doing everything right so far, except the opening. But John is trying hard not to smile right now. I can just tell. He's holding his I don't even know how to describe that pose.
I mean, he really looks like he's about to come up with some new wave of philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. He's thinking through Friedrich Nietzsche as he's trading the bishops.
Yep. And how much time is left? 9.5+ minutes left of this match. That's tough. Don't blunder knight F4 check. You didn't. And white is still up a pawn.
No, but I like what John's doing. You're starting to massage those pawns. That knight on D5. Guess where it is? D5. What a big surprise. A5.
Trying to go A4. Undermine
Knight
the pawn
D7.
structure.
Knight F6. Yep.
A timely knight E4 will be nice for black to undermine the protection of the B3 square. And he's trying to go knight C5 check, and the rook on E7
Knight E5. Knight E5.
Knight E5 is better, but still
And then E4 check intermezzo.
Look at the king. It's going into G4.
Lawrence spotted it. Rook H7, Rook G7. I would just slice off all those pawns while you can. John, unhinged there. DC though. That king. What a savage.
Oh my gosh, are these pawns going? No, white's pawn has
F4, F4, F3, F2, F1.
Knight F6. Just do it.
Do it. Okay, now
Rook
he takes
G8.
D7. This is not over, actually.
Rook G8. It's over.
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
Queen H2.
Queen H2 is really nice.
Mano a mano, knight D2. What a elegant British checkmate.
And Lord Trent takes one. He now is down 14-6 in the match score. And I mean, I think the way he looks says it all. He is really upset with how this match has gone. He looks sad. This is making me sad.
Yeah, and it's just the problem is when you're faced with such an insurmountable advantage, just motivating yourself to keep trying to find the best move in every position is very difficult. At the same time, scoring a couple of consolation goals is also a good feeling. We remind the viewers that there is some prize money tied into the scores. So there is definitely some intrinsic motivation. But this is another buzzsaw for John. And that knight on C6 is so loose.
Yeah, that's not going to be a good look.
To
here
perform
for
a root
Lawrence.
canal on that c file. Queen takes c7 is coming in.
And then the rook on d8 is not even defended because the rook on e7 blocks the queen's protection of it. And, you brought up the prizes. The players largely are playing for the joy of chess. These are lifelong competitors. And I think, I should bring this up every time. We're here covering this action. We love these players. They're very, very strong. They spend, these are most of the players, with the exception of Teddy, and I can't think of anybody else, are chess professionals. And just to become an international master, you've spent so much time, dedicate so much effort to the game of chess. And these are extremely strong players in their own right. And so I just wanted to remind everybody of that, and also say that they're playing for pride, they're playing for some money, and any donation that is given goes to the player's pocket. So if you're a fan of John Bartholomew, if you're a fan of Lawrence Trent, donate away. And especially at this point, I think Lawrence, he could use a little pick-me-up because he's down 14-6 in this match.
And we appreciate his fighting spirit. And to your point, Robert, that was very well said. Very little that I have to add. But, some people I've told about this match too, they wave their hands. It's literally in the title, I am not a GM. How could this be interesting? Well, I challenge you to find a single match that has been as hard fought, as fascinating as virtually every one of these matches. These players are coming in, putting their hearts onto the game, onto every single game. They're pouring their blood, sweat, and tears out into the match. So we have been treated to some incredible chess, and there's some incredible chess, of course, still to come in the decisive matches.
I do think we've been spoiled a bit, in particular Teddy Coleman with his 2 match victories down to the very last game. Alina Kashinskaya, her victory over Chess Explained in the opening round. And it just, these matches, sometimes they become lopsided. That's not unique to this event. In the Speed Chess Championship, we've seen many of the top players lose by incredibly large margins. I'm reminded of Levon Aronian beating Fabiano Caruana by a score something like 20-6. Right, you don't expect that to happen. It just sometimes does happen, and these players are giving it their all. They're preparing for the matches, and they want to win. And unfortunately, this time around for Lawrence, he won his first round of this match, and everything after that first game went downhill for him. And kudos to John Bartholomew, who is cool as a cucumber. He's now up a pawn in this position.
Mm-hmm.
He's just going to play this one out for a bit. I mean, either way, the match is his, but you're up a pawn, I would play this, especially because knights, when you've actually pawn with knights on the board, you have more winning chances than with bishops in this type of position.
Indeed, it's a completely different kettle of fish. And you can see that in effect. After king g6, there's knight f4 check, dislodging the king. Then you take on f7. Lawrence, that's just pure desperation. I mean, that's probably not going to get it done. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination here of tactical sharpness. John was just much more tactically alert. When things came down to these highly tactical scrambles.
King f3, draw.
And as I say, he's tactically alert. He blunders that, but it doesn't matter anymore. He just outcalculated Lawrence. What in the world?
You've definitely spoke too soon, didn't you?
I have. Oh my goodness. Okay, but it's still a draw.
Yes.
Just don't blunder the rook too.
But you were giving a shout out to John before I've rudely
Never mind,
you.
forget it. He can only redeem himself by taking another sip of that coffee.
Yeah, and I see somebody asking the question I wanted to ask. What's a kettle of fish?
No, it's an expression, a different kettle of fish. Isn't that the expression?
I mean, I've never really heard of it.
You can also say a different cup of tea.
I mean, a kettle of fish is something that...
Is that an expression, or am I just inventing that? Somebody's got to confirm it.
Well, I just Googled it, and kettle of fish is a neighborhood bar in Greenwich Village. So...
Kettle of fish expression. The expression a kettle of fish is usually part of the phrase. A different kettle of fish has a separate meaning, which is an alternative, a different thing altogether. Robert, did you hear what I just said? That's right.
I mean, I looked it up and I saw the same thing that you just read. I liked the thing that I read a little more, though.
Oh, well, I like the thing I read a little bit more. So
okay, well, I'm glad we agree to disagree.
Yeah, I'm glad.
I'm so glad we're not commentating together tonight.
Me too, Robert. I think we need to cool down.
I mean, I don't even know what to say to you right now.
I don't know what to say to you either, man.
Knight f8 traps the queen.
Oh,
Knight f8
to say knight f8 was
Knight
savage.
f8. Missed an opportunity there.
But man. But it's now rook e3. I think.
I love how I don't even think you were doing it on purpose there with the man. I think you just adopted it. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Knight g5, by the way, wins the game. Rook f3. Knight g5 is a blow.
And there it is.
There
Lawrence
it is.
Trent
Lawrence
finds
was
it.
inspired in the last games of the match. Got to give him some credit. I mean, he is playing it out until the very end.
Oh,
Queen h2. It has to be all those diagonals.
D5?
Queen d6 here.
Yeah, Queen d6 protects the d5 pawn attacks f6, and f6 falls. I mean, wait, g2? Start taking some pawns here. Okay, he should have taken g2 first.
Somebody just savage in the chat saying my quips are last in style in 1565 England. There's a bunch of things I want to say in response to that, but I won't say any of them. I'm feeling nice.
Dine, just let the words fall out, man.
No, I was just gonna say that.
No, don't say it. It's not already
okay, I won't say it.
Just the way you're hesitating makes me know that you shouldn't say what you want to say.
It wasn't that bad, but I won't say it.
It felt like it was going to be bad, and I wanted to protect you. So
it involved someone's face. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, let's
tone it down.
Tone it down, my friend.
Fair enough.
You know, all the jokes we make about you getting fired, and I do enjoy commentating with you. So I'm just trying to make sure that you don't get baited by the Twitch chat and say something that you regret. So
thank you. I know you're always looking out for me, Robert.
Now, like I said earlier, I try to be the responsible one when I can.
Fair enough. We'll
Is this the last game of the match? How much time do we have left?
I think there will be one more game once John resigns this, which he will a3 after this brutal attacking move a3.
Wait, he can actually run out the match if he plays all his moves quickly.
Yeah, he can. I think that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, he's just like, I don't want to play one more. I don't want to have to.
Yeah, guys, just want to go back and take a little breather.
A YouTube video will be posted to my channel later tonight.
Exactly. You're getting the hang of it.
If you don't see a YouTube channel video tonight, well, I just got a little busy. I had my Speed Chess Championship match, and well, I just lost that game, but it's okay, guys.
You're getting nice. I like it.
I've been listening to you, so just hey guys, it's John.
Hey guys, John. Yeah, that voice is hard to get, and that's what I've been struggling with Lawrence. I've never been good at a British accent, actually. That's been one of my biggest weaknesses.
It's okay.
Bishop d5. Yeah, that's a very interesting move. John going out on a major limb playing e4, and I think he's surprised to find no limbs fell out from him when he played 1e4, to borrow the Russian expression. Last popular in 1566.
Wait, we haven't had a Scandinavian. You talking about e4. I'm thinking about things. I'm like, there has not been a Scandi. Like, if I were Lawrence, and you don't have enough time to think as a bullet game, but if John is playing e4 against me, I'm playing the Scandi right back.
Oh, absolutely.
What's this?
Oh, John is. Let's just say the effort level that John is putting in this game is
too high.
16%.
How did you get to 16? I'm curious.
Because it's the tilt, and I mean, mirror, it's the tilting.
Wait. Did you see that move? Do you see that queen blunder? And he didn't take him. Oh my God.
I'm telling you, that's where the 16 came from, Robert.
Queen d6 was played. I don't even know what the move was.
And Loris with the smile, John with the smile, they both realize it.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. And now black is up a pawn.
Oh my God. Rook d8, knight a6.
Knight a6. Yeah, we said at the same time. High five, Danya.
King e7, knight b8, knight c6.
Hey, I gave you a high five.
High five.
No, it's too late now. I feel like that was just one-sided.
Rook a8, rook a7.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're going to take a break because the players will join us any moment. So we will be right back with these two to hear their thoughts about what was a very fun match. We'll be right back. And as we return to the match here, it's just finished. Lawrence Trent, our apologies on that result. Of course, it's not what you wanted. But my first question has to be, do you have anything you want to say to Greg Shahade?
Well, I don't have anything I really want to say. I mean, if I can avoid any communication with Greg Shahade, it's a bonus. But all I'm going to say is, Greg, you know, you're playing a very strong player this afternoon. And she's better than you, let's face it. She's more talented. And I'm really hoping that she gives you a good beating. But I want to say congratulations to John. He deserved the victory, no question. I felt as though I had some very good positions earlier on in the match, in the 5-minute portion, that I didn't convert. A number of games come to mind when I had my rooks on the C-file, and there were other ones. And I just didn't get my flow going. There were some mouse slips, there were some blunders, and I wasn't as fresh today, certainly, as I was against Kostya. And John was just very tricky when it came down to the wire. When it came to the time scramble, he was better. And then in the 1 minute, when there was a 4-point deficit and I still had a chance, you know, you've got to get off to a flying start. And when you lose a few, it's just all over. I found myself getting kind of in the groove at the end of the 1 minute, but it was too little too late.
And John, on your end, it seemed like a very well-played match. After you lost that first game, you bounced back with 5 straight wins. And in that final game of the 3-minute portion, when you just blundered your rook in a winning position, did you start to have some fear trickle in that now it's only a 4-game match and you're probably upset about that blunder and anything can happen in Bullet?
A little bit, not so much fear, but it just puts a bad taste in your mouth, right? Heading into a different time control. But, you know, in a long match like this, there's going to be breaks either way. As Lawrence said, there were a couple of games that came down to the wire that I got that probably I shouldn't have. One of them was the Slav game where he had this pressure on the C-file at an awkward bishop on C5 pinned by both of his rooks. And in a time scramble, queen and knight, like I somehow got something around his king and he lost. But no, I felt like the Bullet would go okay, but these matches are all about momentum too. So, you know, you do want to immediately try to, you know, I lost 3 out of the last 4 games in the 3-1. Want to immediately try to string together a couple wins in the Bullet.
Well, John, congratulations. I have 2 questions for you. One serious question, one super serious question. Let's start with the serious question. We were impressed throughout with your tactical awareness. You found several very impressive tactical blows. The one I'm thinking about is rook e7 followed by knight g6.
Yeah,
did you do any special kind of preparation, psychological or puzzles, anything that you did consciously, or did you just kind of feel sharp coming into the match?
The only thing I did is I looked at Lawrence's match with Kostya a little bit, just kind of looked at the openings that he was playing, as in just literally try to get an assessment of what he plays. But I didn't do any special preparation. I did go back and look at our death match from a couple years ago, because that's when Lawrence and I played a match for the first time. So I was just trying to get a feel for what it was like back then. But no, nothing special, just trying to manage my time, which I think I did all right. But there were some games where it got out of hand. Like Lawrence was definitely pressing me on the clock sometimes.
I think I need to get to the super serious question because I've just gotten 8,000 people very riled up about this. Throughout the match, John, now we both started the match with mugs of coffee. I assume you had coffee in your mug of approximately the same size. I finished mine about halfway through the 5-minute portion, and I'm pretty sure we took approximately the same number of sips out of that cup. So we were starting to wonder, because the more games you won, the more vigorous your swills were from the cup. Was there actually anything in the cup, or was it an instinct? At what point was that empty, or did you refill it?
My Twitch viewers, shout out to the Twitch audience, by the way. You guys are awesome. They will know that I often just bring an entire pot of coffee upstairs with me from my kitchen. So that's what I had next to me, and I was occasionally refilling it. But yeah, I slept terrible last night.
And the mystery has been solved.
I thought you had a sponsorship deal where you had like 5 of the same exact mugs and you just poured coffee into every single one. And you're just switching off.
I got this one. I have some tea that I didn't touch. It's cold now. But no, in total honesty, I slept terrible last night. I've been like very busy and a little bit stressed, just personal life, work-wise a little bit lately. So nothing major, but I think it definitely affected my like psychological preparation, let's say, going into this match. So I know I needed like a main line of caffeine to keep me steady.
Yeah, straight into the veins. Yeah,
just inject it.
Well, Lawrence, like we were saying, of course, this match didn't go the way you wanted. What do you think that you should have done differently as you haven't really had time to process and look back, but what could you have done differently against John to have turned the match in your favor?
I mean, ultimately, when you play as somebody as good as John, you got to take your chances. There is nothing different per se I would do. I got the positions I wanted. I got the dynamic play I wanted. You could see all these Slav positions. He played a very suboptimal line with Bishop G4. I don't know it in depth, but there are various ways for me to get very pleasant positions. So it's not like I changed my openings. I just didn't convert when I needed to. I mean, there were at least 2 or 3 games I can think right now in the earlier portions. If I'm within sort of 2 points, then it's a real match. But I felt like it was drifting, and maybe I could have been a bit sharper. Maybe I could have, also I came in slightly less fresh than I did the other day. But no, look, you got to put your hand up and say John was the better player, took his chances, and I wish him all the best, especially if he plays Greg Shahade, if Greg manages to swindle his way through against Carissa Yip, because that's really all he knows. If he does that and he plays John next, then you can bet your bottom dollar I'm going to be rooting for John, and he does, fantastic player. What can I
Well, thank you both so much for what was a very fun match. Again, Lawrence, next time, hopefully better for you. And John, we'll see you in the next round. Congratulations, and keep up this momentum here. Yeah. Thanks, Lawrence. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Well, you heard it from the players themselves. Lawrence Trent saying, you know what? Today was just John Bartholomew was the better player than I was. And so John moves on to the semifinals. He awaits the winner of Carissa Yip versus Greg Shahade. It seems like they're friendly barbs being thrown between.
Friendly.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's friendly ribbing.
True.
Greg and Lawrence have this history of playing matches against each other. Greg has won those. But on a serious note, that is a very interesting matchup that we'll see at 6 p.m. Pacific time tonight. Will be Carissa Yip versus Greg Shahade. I don't even know who I favor at the moment between those two. I have way more experience playing with Greg. He's a really fantastic player, and we saw him beat Anna Zatonsky in the opening round in a very tough matchup. But Carissa Yip's a very different style than Anna plays. Anna is more technical, more sound. Carissa Yip likes to play more energetic chess, which on one hand could play into Greg's favor because he enjoys that kind of chess. But on the other hand, when you fight fire with fire, you're both going to get burned.
Indeed, Carissa has shown her tenacity. She's shown her tactical sharpness against Dina Polito. I will unfortunately not be able to join that evening match, but I will certainly watch the playback, and I look forward to the games. And this was yet another interesting match. Obviously got out of hand, and John, simply the better player. But Robert, it's been a pleasure commentating every single one of these with you. As much as, the roasting goes on at the end of the day, couldn't find a better commentating partner. So,
and as we learned from John, there's always more coffee in the pot. So let the roasting continue. But thank you, Danya, for your nice words. I love commentating alongside you. And thank you to all of the viewers here, whether you're watching on Chess TV, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. We really do appreciate you. It makes our job so much more fun, and the friendly chat and just everyone's interest in the game of chess just makes the world a better place. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
The IM GM Speed Chess Championship brought to you by Chess.com. There will be more later tonight.